Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by the returning Crispin Glover. It's very good to have you back.
Glad to be back. Thank you.
Yeah. So your new film, No, You're Wrong, is starting its tour, which is really exciting, and I'm excited to talk to you about it because it's very mysterious.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I want to get correct information out, and like already IMDb, which is not user friendly, has so much incorrect information. I'm trying to correct it, and it's not easy. So I sent you a proper scroll that's at the end of the film. In a strange way, the scroll gives information about the film, and I'm a little hesitant to give out information. I'm trying to figure out what's good to let be known and not. So obviously, I assume you've seen the link for the trailer preview.
Yeah, I watched your trailer a couple days ago when you first posted it.
Great. And then there's a series of images I've put out. I'm planning to put more stills out. A lot of the stills I put out are close-ups, portraits, so to speak, of characters in the film. I'm going to start putting out stills. I think even starting today. In a weird way, I like I say, I'm almost hesitant to say too many things about it.
Yeah,
because the nature of the film, I'm having the premiere at MoMA, which is great, the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, October 2nd, 6:30 p.m. There's still some tickets available. It's selling well, so if people are interested, I assume you'll have the link. I think it's
I'll have the link right here for CrispinGlover.com, CrispinHellianGlover.com.
But that genuinely will be the world premiere. I have shown this film to very few people. It was shot on 35 millimeter negative, and I worked 2 years just on color correction because there's different time periods in the film: 1868, 1888, 1918, 1948, and contemporary. And each one has a different color correction element, which I'm using still. I'm using captures from the screen of the film because it's a 35 millimeter negative, but then it was processed in multiple different ways, sometimes reshooting with another 35 millimeter camera. One was a camera from the Czech Republic with the great, it was owned by Karl Zeman, who's one of the great Czech filmmakers. And we reshot stuff that was shot previously with a hand crank camera that was Karl Zeman's hand crank camera, which has a slightly different quality.
I can tell even in the trailer, there's some stuff that has that little bit of like an old silent movie where it's a little like ticky. Like.
Exactly. That was reshot with with Karl Zeman's hand crank camera, which was a 35 millimeter camera, but we were shooting. So it's like, it's a strange thing with film because you could almost call film a filter. Digital, of course, is pixels and film is grains. Mm-hmm. So it has a different quality. But if you shoot film of film, it doubles the quality. And we were looking to give a certain disintegrated quality, an aged quality, which I think I was reading a quote. It's one of the great cinematographers that shot Woody Allen's Zelig.
Oh yeah,
and I'm forgetting the name of the DP right now. But I read something while I was working on this about they delayed that film's release for over a year. I think they shot another film in between, and that film came out before because they were distressing the movie. And it's really well done. I saw it in the movie theater when it came out, whatever year that was. I was, fairly young when it came out, but I have always appreciated the disintegration of film and the quality.
And if you do it like actually with how you're saying with film and then the film shot on film, it's not like if you're doing it on the computer and you can see because it's just the same filter over and over.
You can't. That we abandoned that. Well, we didn't even try it. We knew that's what would happen. So we kept thinking of ways to actually do it. So for the 1868 stuff, we used that it was shot on 35 millimeter film originally in color, full color. It was Fuji negative. This will be the last film ever released that was mostly shot on Fuji negative, although there are other film stocks, Kodak at certain points. And
so is that just gone? Like that's the end of the Fuji?
Fuji's, they don't make 35 millimeter film anymore, and or at least not motion picture film. I don't think they make 35 millimeter still film either, but definitely not. It was I couldn't get it. I was in production. I shot the film.
Did you finish it all on that stock?
No. But there were, because there were different time periods of the film. I believe everything shot for the 1868 and 1880 parts, that was completely shot on Fuji. The 1918, I'm pretty sure I shot all that on Fuji. I think the 1948 was shot on Kodak and contemporary was shot on Kodak. But the 1948, we did a different process for each time period. So 1868 and 1888, first off, we shot it on 35 millimeter color negative. Everything that I shot was digitized with a 35 millimeter motion pictures scanner, which I own. I bought it in Los Angeles years ago. I bought it probably in 2008, 2009 off of eBay. So it was a really early scanner, but there's people in the Czech Republic that I started a not-for-profit 35 millimeter film laboratory, which is not an easy thing to do. There's five guys and me, and all of the equipment is at my property in the Czech Republic. It's a large property, and there's many buildings. Two of the buildings house all this material, but it's just the equipment. It's not set up except for my scanner. Anyhow, this is such a long and involved process and story. But where was I going with this? The scanner was set up by one of the fellows in the not-for-profit organization, Richard, and everything was scanned on that scanner. He retrofitted something. He did some work on it, so it was a more modern thing, but it worked. It was a good scanner. So then everything was scanned. This scanning started in 2020. That was officially, I believe, the year, or maybe it was 2019 was the year, right? It was not too long before the pandemic when my official post-production started after I'd edited everything. I edited everything myself on Adobe Premiere. I had assistants do things early on here and there, but I edited the film. And so the color correction was very complicated, but I'll say what happened with each section. So first it was all digitized, 4K. Then we did color correction to just be able to see it. Some stuff, that takes setting up. Then František was the name of the fellow who was doing the color correction work. And he's also part of this. The Czech word is spolek for not for profit. And so he's part of the spolek. And he came up with some good solutions for things as well in terms of the color correction, because I'd not planned to do the color correction when I shot the film. It's a clue as to what's going on, but it's the kind of thing where an audience will watch it and it's a subconscious clue, because, you know, there's not a placard that says, although there are titles here and there for certain characters that say Brutus Muldoon, 1888, and there's me, and actually I have a facial hair not too dissimilar to that character right now, but it's 1888 period clothing. Then you see a later date, 1918. There's a reveal. My father is holding a newspaper, end of the Great War, World War I. It's an actual newspaper, and he's revealed with a placard that says Brutus Muldoon 1918. Now I don't want to be too evident, because I could just spell things out in the details of the you know, people keep asking me for a one line about the film, but the title of the film already is long. Know You're Wrong, or Spooky Action at Distance.
Last time I talked to you, you didn't even really want to say the title.
No,
so
I only now I'm revealing the title. It just, and the part of the reason I wasn't doing it was because I didn't want misinformation put up on the IMDb, but there is misinformation on the IMDb, and I can't change it. Right now they have the incorrect title. They don't have the whole title. It's there's got to be something easier. I have somebody that's helping me, but that's not working for the IMDb. But they have to go in one square at a time and try to make the change, and then it takes 24 hours to see if IMDb will respond. And IMDb, when I've tried to do it myself, it says, we will not accept this information. I'm the filmmaker.
You're the filmmaker. Yeah.
I have all the correct. I have the title. I have all the correct information. They don't, and the people that put the information in, I didn't put any of the information. It's incorrect. It's absurd. So now I'm starting to do this promotion. So I'm having to email every single person I do promotion with the title role, so they don't get the incorrect information off of the IMDb.
Yeah, that's my very first show. I started the show in 2006. My first guest was Sid Haig, and like one of the things he went off about was how bad IMDb was, and that's been 20 years ago.
Well, obviously it's a good.
You have
resource.
to use it as a tool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good tool. It's just at this moment it's not accurate, and they don't make it easy to fix it. So IMDb is current. I assume it'll get fixed.
Yeah,
I hope.
when you're doing the color correcting for each of the time periods, like what do you go off of? Do you go off like from film from that era, or like pictures?
Okay, yes, yeah. And actually, it's one of the reasons that I'm glad I'm premiering at MoMA, because I would go to MoMA at certain time periods. MoMA has, for me, they have the best programming. Cinema programming of anywhere in the world. I'll regularly go there just to watch their films. And part of what I love is the silent era and the early pre-code films. And I've always been interested in the pre-Technicolor. I'm interested in Technicolor, but also I'm interested in the pre-Technicolor colorations. And it was actually in the middle of while we were doing it, or maybe just at the end, but I'd been studying it for a long time. I've always been interested in it. But they had a pre-Technicolor program at MoMA. I went and looked at it. And so the eras of the film, 1868, I'm forgetting the exact date of the very first film. I think, yeah, 1868 predates the first film. I think might be the 1879 or 1880. It's somewhere in probably in the 1880s. I should look it up, but I don't think it's in the late 1870s. It is in the I could be wrong even that. It could not be till the 1890s. Anyhow, the time periods don't correlate in the film to the actual situation that was going on in the coloration of film. But what I tried to do was make the oldest stuff feel somewhat like found footage from the oldest kind of found footage you would have, with some kind of coloration on it. So I wasn't trying to do black and white. I was trying to do early, what is his name? Malays? I should have all this information memorized. There's the great French filmmaker there's many filmmakers that would do it, but his was particularly beautiful. That frame by frame, they would have people go in with a dye and paint it. And I could tell by the way that it was art directed that it was done. They were flats with large, thick lines behind them, so that the color, once it was used, a dye was used in it, the dye will float. So if you have thick lines, it will keep it inside of the line. I didn't have the production design. I didn't art direct it for this purpose. It was something I realized after, that it will help to give clues, because of the way the film's edited. There's different time periods that it's not chronological. It flashes back and forth. So rather than trying to have cards,
so like a date popping up, you can, if you're paying attention, you can tell just by the way.
But I mean, unless people are paying attention, or even many people wouldn't even have a concept. So in a certain way, is for me, like I can tell. I don't know how many other people will be able to tell, but that on some level that doesn't matter. And that's also why I don't want to. I'm a little wary of saying too many things, because the nature of the film, it's very specific to me. It's actually, to me, on many levels, I won't say it's a standard storyline, but in many ways it is. There's two aspects to it. There's what was the original film, Know You're Wrong, which was scripted by myself, my father, and a fellow named Mike Pelagi, friend of mine, who I sort of got involved in the project because I knew my father was going to end up wanting to become involved in the writing, and I knew it would be difficult to deal with him in that way. I wanted a friend to be able to talk to, and Mike's a good fellow and a good writer, and so we worked out, and then inevitably my father said he wanted to have a part in it, in the writing, which I said was fine. But I had directed my father before in my second film, It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine, and he was very easy to direct as an actor. He was good. That was not an issue. But working with him as a writer was not easy. Yeah. But that was Know You're Wrong. And then there's Spooky Action at a Distance, which then I wrote that by myself. That was after a number of years of filming. We'd shot everything for Know You're Wrong. And there were things that I could correct with the film. Part of the reason I fund my own films is so I can do this kind of thing. Nobody would stand for what I'm doing. I know that. And it wouldn't make sense either, because the way a corporate film works, a lot of money comes in, and then everybody gets together in a relatively short time period. Everything's shot, edited, and ideally released as soon as possible so the investors can get their money back. And I completely understand why that, and it makes sense, and it's not even bad. I mean, great movies have been made in that way. But for me, just the way that I make my own films, I like to take time with it. it's not that I mean, I started developing this film when the year It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine premiered in Sundance, which was 2007. This is ridiculous. It couldn't, but at the same time, it's not like I paused and there were always things I was doing. And
because sometimes when someone tells me they've been working on a movie so many years, it's really, they worked on it a little bit here, and then like a year later they worked on it, more or something.
Well, I mean, on some level there was an aspect of that, but it wasn't like I just sat and went, no, well, I'm there. I was always doing something. When you make a film this way, or when I make a film in this way, I should say. I mean, the production value is high when one sees the film. The trailer that I've made, I plan to make more trailers for it. I didn't actually show off a lot of the production value in it. I kept it with something about the watch that has the
I had that in my notes because the stopwatches, the pocket watches throughout the whole trailer.
Yeah, in fact, if you look behind me, there's the image. That was a prop. That was a prop from the film, but so. There are different thematic elements within the movie, and that's also why I don't like to. I don't know what to say exactly yet, because
as a film fan myself, I do prefer a movie that lets the audience, interpret it.
Me too. To, like, I mean, that's that. I don't like films that say you. Here's the reveal. We had all this planned out. Now you know what it is. Go home. You never have to think about it again. That's the last. I don't like watching. I mean, I'll watch those films, but no, I want a film that lets me become part of the narrative. And I recently, well, it's been a number of years, but there's an interview with Stanley Kubrick online where a Japanese reporter comes to England, flies from Japan to England to meet with Stanley Kubrick. And when he gets to, I think it's the studio where they shot The Shining, because Kubrick's off somewhere doing something for the film, which I've been doing that. I understand. It's like you think something's done. There's still things. I'm waiting for something to come to me for the premiere to look at. It's just, there's always stuff going on. But so he's off somewhere doing something with the film, and his daughter Vivian Kubrick, who had done a documentary, it's a great documentary about the making of The Shining, is there to meet this reporter from Japan, and so she gives an interview with him, which is an interesting interview in itself, and then finally, like, different people are trying to get a hold of Kubrick or something, but he's not there. And finally, Kubrick gets on the telephone with the reporter who's flown all the way out from Japan, and I think he must have felt guilty that he didn't, because the guy could have called him from Japan without flying all the way out.
Right.
But actually, it's one of the more revealing interviews with Kubrick. But to the extent that it made me realize how important it was not to reveal things, because he's talking about The Shining. So I think he's kind of, Kubrick's figuring out what to talk about The Shining, but he feels kind of bad that he hasn't been there in person. And Kubrick was was very good about not saying too much about his films. But he the reporter asks him what the ending of the 2001 means, and Kubrick gives a very detailed answer to the point where I did not like that I heard all those details, because the first time I saw the film was when I was 4 or 5 years old. I saw it at the drive-in movie theater in its initial release with my parents at a drive-in movie theater. And I remember the film, and I remember I liked the film. That's what I thought movies were. And I basically understood the film. Kubrick talks about that in some other interview where he says, kids understand the movie, and it's adults start trying to get too many interpretations. I mean, I think I understand many more aspects of it than I did when I was 4 or 5,
Right.
but I got the basic idea of it and I liked the movie.
Yeah.
But I've watched it many times, and there were things I thought about the end that when I heard Kubrick say what it was like, oh, I don't want to, I like what I have in my head. I like it. I actually liked it better than, I mean, there were aspects to it that I kind of understood anyhow, but that's why I'm a little wary of it, because
I know exactly what you mean. It's fun
not
to
that my film is going to be on the level. I mean, you know, Kubrick's 2001 is a true masterpiece from probably the greatest cinematic director there's ever been. But so I'm not meaning to say I have a film on that level, but I understand the concept of that. It's probably better not to say too much.
It's interesting, though. You say you went to see 2001 when it first came out at the theater that you're going to be playing in Boston at Coolidge. I went to see the 60th anniversary 2001 when it came out.
Right.
There was an older gentleman next to me, and he told me that he went to see the premiere of it at that same theater, and I thought
great.
that was really wild.
I'm looking forward to that venue. I love those are my favorite kinds of venues to play, because I perform a live dramatic narration of different books that are these books I rework from the 1800s. They're profusely illustrated and they're projected behind me. And I do that. I'm actually needing to do a different version. I have 2 different versions of the show that I've done before each of the 2 films before. And this film's a bit longer. This film's 85 minutes. My first 2 films were 72 and 74 minutes. And this film was 90 minutes until 3 months ago. And I re-edited, I recut the film. I cut 5 minutes out. And I am glad I did it. It made the film better for a lot of different reasons. But even just 5 minutes makes a difference. And so, and it isn't just one solid thing, it's throughout, and there's different organization of the film. But I play live. I do so the actual venue is important to me. And the old vaudeville era, you know, vaudeville was how people got their entertainment in the 1800s through sometime in the up to probably the 40s, maybe. But maybe even a little bit later than that. But those vaudeville houses, which were for live performances, and many of them also, some of them were after film had started, but most of the best ones are pre-film. I'm assuming the Coolidge Corner is probably a pre-film venue. Just by the looks of it, those are usually the most.
Yeah, because it's got like the stage where the theater is. Yeah,
exactly, and those are just such beautiful venues. So
which is also
really
nice, a little thing for people out there. Even if you sit in the front row at a theater like that, you're fine. Because if you're at a front row at a modern theater, you gotta look straight up. But when they have the stage or even the front, I actually prefer the front row.
Many cinephiles prefer the front row. I tend toward preferring the front row, except for when there are many cinephiles sitting all in the front row. Then I like sitting by myself. I don't like being in a crowded.
I totally get you.
But there are times when I really want to see something and it's a sold out show, and then I'll just deal with it.
Yeah.
But okay, so it's good for me to talk about the technical aspects of the color correction, because it sort of gives information out that's both technical and it has something to do with the content of the film. So 1868, like I say, every single piece of footage was shot in color with Fuji and later with Kodak stock. Then I think we even used another stock for when we reshot, but I'll get into that. It might be something called Orvo, which was a monochrome 35 millimeter stock, which either is German or Czech. I can't remember, but so for the 1868 and the 1888. We reshot off of a high, like a 2 or 4K monitor. We reshot all of the footage with those scenes. The 1868 only has 2 minutes of footage within the whole film. That was hand processed by František. He physically took the negative and had a bucket or whatever it is with the chemistry. It was black and white film. Was able to hand process it. We wanted the deteriorated look. Then that was digitized on the scanner. Then no, the print before it was digitized. Well, it was digitized, so we had a reference to it. But then it was given to an animator who took a die, and frame by frame, certain parts were picked out, just 2 colors, picked out to, this is 24 frames per second. So it's a huge, even in the silent era, it would have been 16 frames per second. So a little less. This is 24 frames per second, which happened in the advent of sound. So there's 2 minutes of footage and that took a long time for the guy to, do that. He was a Czech animator and he did a good job.
So it's kind of like in Phantom of the Opera, where there's a little bit of color.
Yeah, well, now that's a whole different process. That's a 2-strip Technicolor. That was something I wanted to try to attempt, which Technicolor is that's a fascinating story in of itself. But I'll get to that. That was 2-strip Technicolor, which was a red channel and a green channel. Technicolor figured they would first perfect the 2 channels. There would be black and white, then red and green. And then they knew once they got that working, it would be easier to get the 3rd channel, which would be a blue or a yellow. I'm forgetting. Anyhow, so 1868, that was hand done, frame by frame. Then that was digitized and edited into the film. Okay, so 1888, we shot with the hand crank Carl Zeman camera, and then that was not hand processed. That was processed at a laboratory because we still wanted the feeling, the hand crank camera, which could be, actually I could be wrong. Maybe it was 16 frames. I was just saying 24 frames, but because it was hand crank, it very well could have been 16 frames. 16 frames is the rate where motion becomes apparent. But once sound came in, for whatever reason, something to do with the crystal sync, something with a literal crystal at the time, 24 frames was where it worked. Anyhow, so 1888, it was then sent to the laboratory, but it still had the feeling of the hand crank camera. Both of those were shot with the monochrome, I believe a film called Orville, or Orvo, something like that. Black and white, either from Germany or Czech. And then that was cut into the film. Then 1918 is where, okay, so right. So what I wanted to accomplish with the 1888 was before Technicolor, there was, and after the hand stenciling, there was something, I used the wrong term, hand animating, there was something called stencil color, which I'm a little vague on. But with the understanding of stencil, it probably meant there was some kind of form that was made. I don't know if it was for particular scenes. Like I've seen the films, and it's also got an interesting look, which is different from the frame by frame look. So there was a stencil. If you had maybe the ocean, you'd have a kind of a blue, and then the sky might be a different blue, or grass might be green, but it was a more solid color. I don't know what the process was, but that was sort of the look we were attempting to get for the 1888 part. We wanted to do everything as authentically as we could, but I don't know what they did. The hand printing I knew. So we did it. We devised something that looks like it. But and when I saw in the Museum of Modern Art this series of pre-Technicolor color, I was pretty happy with what we did. I mean, it's impossible to do exactly what they did because just the technology is the technology. Anyhow, then to 1918, that we didn't reshoot. That we tried to do, we just did with color correction. So my original concept was, I want 1918 to look like 3-strip Technicolor, which is a little bit different from later, which was just called Technicolor. But 3-strip Technicolor, so I was actually at Technicolor when I was doing my first film, What Is It? And I saw one of the original 3-strip Technicolor cameras. I'm forgetting, it was a big thing, but what I'm forgetting, because I know something about the technology, I'm forgetting if it was 3 magazines or if it was 3 lenses. It was big, whatever it was, but it was a whole different contraption. It was gigantic. It was a huge. You couldn't handhold this camera. It's either 3 different lenses or 3 different strips of right. Film that then they integrated later. That's why but it's called 3-strip Technicolor. Later they had something else where it's just called Technicolor that had to do with some kind of machine and matrices that it wasn't a photographic process, I believe. It was some kind of dye process, but not like the hand dye. Anyhow, I wish somebody would get those old machines up and running, because I think the last usage of them were in China. There was some in China they were using up through the 80s, I believe, maybe even into the early 90s.
Was this all stuff that you had known just because or was this stuff you researched specifically for the movie?
Both, but I've always had an interest in it. So like I had gone to a Technicolor symposium at the American Cinematheque in Los Angeles sometime in the 90s. So I'm a cinephile about very specific things. I've always really liked silent and pre-code and early color films. Part of it is being in the film industry and you experience things, and it's hard for me when I'm watching contemporary films, for the most part, it's hard for me to get lost in the movie, because I know sometimes I personally know the people in the film or the filmmakers or what have you. And then I think about what is it they're trying to say in the movie, but I often get distracted with, I can see the political elements behind it, the corporate interest motivations, and it starts to feel untrue to me, and it pulls me out of the film. I don't think that happens to most people, but it happens to me. So when I'm making my own film, I want to, for me, somehow be able to get lost. But also when I'm looking at films, I enjoy looking at films that were made 100 years ago, because that's a whole different culture and time, even if it's a US film. And I can get lost in it. And some of them are truly great. I mean, silent film in particular, I would argue that
well, I think like Nosferatu, I think still is like one of the scariest looking images in movies.
But I'm not talking about just fright. Sure, there's the fright. Sure. Nosferatu is good, although Murnau, as good as Nosferatu is, I mean, his best films are The Last Laugh with Emil Jannings and Sunrise. Those are just and I mean, and some of the art direction in what is it called? It's not my favorite Jannings performance, but he plays. Is it not Mephistopheles? He plays a devil-like character. No, they did an Othello. I'm pretty sure. Maybe that's not with Murnau. I'm forgetting, but they definitely did a Tartuffe. His performance is really good in Tartuffe. But the art direction, this one I'm forgetting the name of, which is by Murnau, is just, it's the art direction of the Weimar period in Germany. Really, compared to what was going on in the United States, the Weimar production design and it was incredible. It was just, and that, of course, that's where both Fritz Lang and Murnau were coming from, both who came to the US, and sadly Murnau died at a pretty young age, I think in a car accident. But yeah, so
you were talking about your love of, silent films.
Yeah. I would argue that the advent of sound, it's a completely different art form. The silent film, and when silent film is done well, there is nothing more powerful than silent film, because, as opposed to sound, there are amazing, powerful films made with sound, no question. But when you're looking at a silent film and the only audio is music, and whether that's by a pianist or an organist or an orchestra of some kind, you're not interpreting words, you're looking at something happening. So our primary or one of our primary senses is sight. And language was developed later. All animals with eyes have the ability to look and interpret something. So it's a very deep instinct. So if you're looking at something and it's revealing it to you through your eyes, and you're not having to interpret a language, even if it's your own language, it's slightly lagging in time to what sight is. And the best filmmakers, like I was saying, The Last Laugh, I think it has only 2 title cards in it, and they're done with, I think one is a business card and maybe a letter. It's really visual, and Murnau was particularly excellent with that. So
is No, You're Wrong, is it, even though you made it to look like a silent film, is it silent during those eras in the movie?
No. Well, 1868 does not have dialogue in it. What I cut together on the for the preview that I've put out right now, yes, I don't have any dialogue in it. The film has dialogue in it, and I should make a preview that has that, but for whatever reason, that trailer I cut together a number of months ago as I was preparing, and I was very happy with the trailer. It's a subsection of the story of the film, almost in not its entirety, but it works as a little bit of a story, even without saying anything. So I was focusing on that particular subsection of the story that's visual in it. And there was a piece of music. I was cutting different trailers together. Charlotte Kemp Muhl did the orchestration for the music. She did a great job. And I had essentially scored the whole film, so to speak, with original orchestral music. Charlotte re-recorded these cues and did different things with it. She did a great job. And she had given me there was a cue that incorporated 2 pieces of music. One is, I think it's by Cezanne, but I used that in the film. And then there was I'll use film thematically. I mean, I'll use music thematically for characters or the thematic idea that goes through the film. So for whatever reason, that cue was just before a different cue. It was in the cut of the film, which was a Vivaldi piece. which is what most of in that trailer is. Most of that is a piece by Vivaldi. But Charlotte recorded we were thinking of different ways of how to make the music essentially affordable to record. You know, my concept originally is it's a period film. I'm wanting it, even though the period of the music is far older than the period of the film, I was wanting to use sort of period recording using orchestral instruments as opposed to any electronic kind of instrumentation. Charlotte, and I'm a huge proponent and enjoyer of Wendy Carlos's music for Clockwork Orange, which is used with a Moog synthesizer. But conceptually, the Moog and Kubrick uses all these Barber of Seville and Beethoven and all these different composers, some of which he uses the original, you know, Deutsche Grammophon recordings, and then some of it is the Wendy Carlos recordings with a Moog. And but that film is supposed to be in the future, Clockwork Orange. So the futuristic sound of the Moog is perfectly blended. It's,
I think in his opinion, always, like, if you use the classical music, like it doesn't date the movie when you're watching it.
Well, right.
Even if it's recorded, you know, in a different way, but it's
right. It can't date it because it's exactly. I tend toward liking to do that. It's not. I mean, I love Kubrick. I've looked at different filmmakers as to how they use scores. Say Fellini with Nina Rota uses scores very differently, and they're amazing. They're great, and it's a very different use of music than the way that Kubrick uses music. What I've noticed with Fellini, and he's one of my favorite filmmakers as well, is that his structure of his stories are sort of loose, which, not that that's bad, but they're a little, like, you can there's even a footage of Fellini directing a scene, I think, from Satyricon, and he's kind of conducting the people with his hands. Yeah. But that's almost the way the scripts read. It's kind of like that, and yet the Nina Rota music is done, it's very memorable. When you listen to a Fellini film, you listen to a, say, 8.5 score, you think about that movie. It's very memorable, and it almost like drives the film along. I mean, it's a fantastic scoring. That's one of his great films. But then another filmmaker I like a lot, Rainer Werner Fassbinder, he uses his scoring in a completely different way. And I got the composer, who I'm going to forget his name right now, great composer. But when you listen to the music of that composer for Rainer Werner Fassbinder, it feels like did I hear that in the movie? It's good music, and it's quite listenable, but it's like, that's not what I watched. Because Rainer Werner Fassbinder's films, for the most part, his basic overall theme is the complete destruction, psychologically and physically, of a human being, for the most part. But then there'll be socio-political messages. It's really amazingly great filmmaking. But what I realized he does with his music is the music is kind of light, lyrical, like romantic sounding, quite beautiful. His films do not feel like that at all. It's terrible. I mean, his filmmaking is great, but generally what's happening is terrible. And the stories usually are pretty tragic. But what he's doing, which is great, is he's opening you up. with the music. It's opening you up so you can feel how terrible things are, and that's what you're remembering from the film. So there's so many, and then another great filmmaker for their composition is Sergio Leone with the other famous composer who right now I'll forget, but you know, what's his name? Anyhow, everybody knows the Sergio Leone's composer's music. He's scored. He died relatively recently. I think he scored.
He did
for,
stuff
for Tarantino.
Yeah.
But and that, in a certain way, not that it's like Kubrick, but there are themes that they're underscoring, literally scoring with the music, that return with the characters. And Kubrick will do that. He'll use his music thematically, but he'll usually use classical. I shouldn't say classical. I should say the music that exists in the repertoire, because classical is a subsection of, there's Baroque, then classical, then Beethoven, post Beethoven, Romantic era, modern, and what I mean by modern is Stravinsky as opposed to contemporary music. Anyhow, so in a certain way they use it. Kubrick and Sergio Leone use their music similarly. However, Leone works with his composer, and Kubrick, he has orchestration I'm probably not dissimilar from what I do, where I'll put it all in, and that, I mean, this is the first time I've worked with someone to orchestrate it, and Charlotte did a great job. Anyhow, I can't remember what the original subject we were that got us into.
I think I was asking about if because you talked about capturing the look of a silent film, and I was just wondering, if any of the movie was silent.
Oh, that's right. So I cut the trailer together. I took a piece that Charlotte had sent to me, that she was advocating to do the film, and she might have not been wrong, because I ended up using it. She wanted to do the entire film with the Moog synthesizer. She wanted it to sound kind of like what Wendy Carlos, but that wasn't what was in my mind. But I ended up, I was cutting stuff together, and I didn't have the music at hand with me that had been done for the film, but I had some early samples that she'd sent me from the Moog. So I was cutting something together. I had done different kinds of trailers, and then I cut that I started realizing, all right, I'm going to do the thing with the watch symbol imagery. And then I had it at its original speed. And then I was running out of space, so I just kept slowing down the music to fit the story pieces. I think it's a 2.5 minute trailer or something. It's just over the time, because I've been posting stuff on Instagram, and to get the MoMA MoMA preview, so people could know about it, and just over 2.5 minutes, it limits visibility or something. So whatever, I just posted it anyhow. But so I just needed to get certain images in to tell that particular subsection of the story, which was visual. And but as it was slowing down, which I did in my first film, What Is It? I used some Wagner, Ride of the Valkyrie, very slow at a certain point. And similarly, it had a strong effect. The symbols, there was a kind of cymbal sound in the Moog effect on this particular track. But the real cymbal, when it's slowed down, it gives a very different feeling than a cymbal at regular speed. and this was happening in the slowdown of the music. And then I loved it. I loved the trailer. I just thought, wow, I'm really happy with this. I liked it more than I liked the film. I thought, that's not good. That's not good.
Uh-huh.
So I went back and I recut the film.
Interesting.
I incorporated that piece at the beginning of the film. I had a very different beginning, and I reorganized the structure of the film. But so the opening, essentially, there's a couple images before that happens, but that music comes in. But essentially, the opening number of minutes of the film is silent with that piece of music. The piece of music then ends up coming back later, which I didn't have. But there's a lot of other music in it. Like I say, I'm going to, and sound, of course, I'm going to cut more trailers together, but it's hard to describe how much work there is because I don't have a standard production team. Mm-hmm. Or post-production team or pre-production team. There are professionals that I'll work with here and there for various things. But for the most part, I work with people who are volunteers that are enthusiastic to do things. And when you do that, I'm funding everything. So you go broke. I'm used to it. This is the third time I've done it. You have the battle in your head when you're the filmmaker and the funder. You have the battle of, well, is this going to be done inexpensively or is this going to be done well? And the filmmaker wins out. And then the funder goes broke. That's me. So, I mean, I'm careful about it. I have to be very careful about my finances in order to make this work. But I've dedicated decades of my life to this, not just this film, but I mean, to this concept of working this way. Mm-hmm. So, anyhow,
you find those two are always at odds, like in filmmaking. The person, even if they're two different people, the person in charge of the finances and the artist.
Corporate film, part of the reason it's shot in the way, which makes sense. I totally understand it. I'm very aware of film financing, particularly because I fund my own films. So I'm aware how important it is to stick within certain structures. And no, by the time something's corporately figured out and they're investors, that takes precedence. So the director will get fired if they don't stick with the, and it has to be, I understand why it has to be done that way, but that's also why I make my films the way I make them.
Do you think you could direct something that is financed by someone else?
Yeah, I could do it. I'm sure I could. And there's a part of me that would like to do it that way just because it goes faster. But I had Werner Herzog. I know Werner Herzog a little bit. He's great. Two filmmakers that I know. I actually know. I'm sad David Lynch, of course, died earlier this year. But he actually he did an autobiography/biography a few years ago, and in it he wrote that he had produced What Is It? Well, had I known he thought that, I would have been advertising that since I premiered What Is It in 2005. Right. There's a reason that there was a mix-up. David Lynch had agreed to executive produce what would be part 3 of, originally it was just a standalone screenplay. It was called It Is Mine, which now would become part 3 of the It trilogy. Some people probably think the movie I'm coming out with now is part 3 of the It trilogy. It's not. But Lynch had agreed to executive produce It Is Mine for me to direct, which was great. And he was helpful. He did work in an executive position as an executive producer. But there was no formal contract between myself and David Lynch. So I had started making What Is It, which ended up becoming a feature film, as a short film originally to promote to a different production. I mean, to a funding company that was interested. They were interested when they heard about the project, and Lynch was involved as the executive producer. I was to direct, and there were different actors I had that were interested, and the company was interested. But after a number of meetings and conversations, they let me know they were concerned about producing a film where a majority of the characters were to be played by actors with Down syndrome. So I started to make a short film to promote that this was a viable thing to do. This is a long and involved story of itself, and I talk about it when I talk about What Is It. I shouldn't go into all the details. Suffice it to say that I went and showed David Lynch, not the final cut of What Is It, but there were still some things I shot later on that were important things, but I showed him a feature-length version of the film, and I told him, I went to his house, which is up for sale right now. Well, there are three of them. So it was one of friends who were. Yeah. It was one of those houses, and there was construction going on for doing a sound studio. But we went in a room and we watched the film. He chain smoked, and at the end he said, "I dig it, I dig it, I dig it." He's always great. Great. David Lynch is great. He's one of the greatest people I've ever known, and so. But I was wondering if he wanted to produce What Is It? That was sort of what I wanted to show him for, because it was a different movie than It Is Mine. But he didn't say that. He just said I did, which was nice. He was nice about it. But he's not that verbal in a way. In a certain way, you'll hear him say things like that. I dig it, I dig it, I dig it. But it's not a lot of detailed things. Something about the way his mind is in the art. Which is great. And I'm not particularly verbal in that way either about contracts and that kind of stuff. So I kind of left thinking, well, he was nice, but he doesn't want to be the producer of it. But I didn't say to him, "Do you want to be the producer of this?" What I realized in retrospect, and I communicated with him about this, there were no bad feelings about it. It was a genuine mix-up. He thought that I had shown him the movie that he had executive produced. He thought What Is It was It Is Mine, because it was a movie with actors with Down syndrome. And so I didn't realize, had I known this in 2005, I would have premiered it as executive produced by David Lynch. Yeah. And because he did do things, he was helpful with things. And I talked to him about it later after the book came out, because I would go to art shows that I was in contact with him in various ways for years. So, and you hear different people talking about him being supportive. He was genuinely supportive to people, myself included. But anyhow, Herzog, how I started talking about that, both Herzog and Lynch in different ways, who I had, were both heroes to me from a long time ago, were really, truly supportive and helpful for the film. And I had a conversation with Herzog. He saw the premiere of What Is It at Sundance in 2005. I'd already shown him a different cut of it, but he coincidentally was there premiering Grizzly Man. I went and saw the premiere of that, and he came and saw What Is It? And he was great. But one of the things he said to me at some point was, he looked at me in the eyes, and you know how Herzog can be commanding in his films, that voice and his kind of authority in the way that he speaks. But he looked at me, and I don't know if you've met Herzog. He's very personable. He's somebody that one does have detailed, intricate kind of conversations with, and he'll be like that with everybody. You can see it in the interviews, and he has that acting school. Fascinating. But he said to me, looked me in the eyes, and he said, "Always produce yourself." And with that kind of command. Now, he was saying that to me. I'm sure that was me specifically. And he was right. Who knows what's going to happen? There's a part of me that, yes, I'd love to have corporate financing and be corporately distributed and all of that. But I also just know I am particular. I do like to do things in a very specific fashion, and it takes some time and doing. Part of the time is that I'm finding it myself, but also I like to think about it. and then I changed the film. It was originally No, You're Wrong. I cut that together. We shot that from, I think, 2013 to 2013. I think we shot that through 2015. Then I cut that together, and there was something missing for me. So I added something. I'll say I made a film within a film. The spooky action at a distance is something else. And that's in the film as well. That's the kind of the contemporary, but it goes back and forth between the older stuff and the newer stuff. But I don't want to say too much about what exactly that is. I'm interested to see. I'll be showing it, at MoMA, October 2nd, 6:30 p.m. People can get the tickets. That will be the first audience that will see the film. I've shown it to individual, mostly filmmaker types. And I get good reaction, but who knows? I don't know what people. I may have been working on this for all this time. People might just absolutely hate it.
I don't want to laugh about that. Yeah.
Well, that's what you do. That's what happens. You've gotta take that gamble. People may hate it. I could have spent a third of my life essentially working on this, and then people might just go, "Oh well, whatever."
Obviously, you've been in so many movies, and you've watched your movies with people and stuff. But something so personal to you, and something that's been that you've been personally making and investing in for all these years. What's like the feeling going into seeing it with people?
I'll be very interested because an audience has a different reaction to an individual. And you can't tell. I probably, if I was a normal marketing type corporate industry, of course they have test screenings and they see what people like or don't like. If it really came to it, I probably could go and change things in the film. If I really thought there was something that I needed, I could. I don't want to do that. I'm not expecting that I'll do that. But if I went in and I watched and I realized, oh no, this is a terrible mistake, and if I did this, this, and this, I could fix it. Kubrick, notoriously, I think in 2001, well, Clockwork Orange might have been for a ratings thing, but he did a recut after it was done, definitely for 2001, definitely for Clockwork Orange, but that might have been before the release, and for The Shining, which he took out after the release and recut. So I can understand. I can understand where you work on something you want, and it's hard. Sometimes ideas and concepts, you realize, oh, this can make it better. And you, like I said, I've had the film locked for years. All of this, post-production I've been describing started in 2019. So I shot every year a production segment between 2013 and I think either 18 or 19. And then 2019, then I edited for about a year, I think. And then then we started the post-production. Then there was a pandemic too, and post-production with all the color correction. So that was in the middle of the color correction. So I wanted the 1918 to be 4-color, 3-color Technicolor. What we did at first, which was wrong, was we super saturated everything. And then it looked fine when looking by itself, but then when I cut it in with the other portions, I'll just say then the easiest portion to color correct was the 1948 and contemporary. Contemporary, we just color corrected for standard contemporary color. Then for 1948, we just made it monochrome. So without any reshooting or anything. So that was relatively easy to do. But the 1918, we did the whole film, and the bulk of the film is the 1918, which I attempted toward doing a 3-strip Technicolor super saturation. But when it looked fine by itself, but when it was in the midst of the other color corrections, what it ended up looking like was incorrectly colored movie. It didn't look like Technicolor. It just looked like incorrectly contemporary film, because Technicolor is a whole different process. You can't replicate it unless you actually took the technology and recreated the technology, which they should. It's an incredibly beautiful technology. Just the way the colors adhere in Technicolor is unbeatable. But so I did something else where we desaturated it. We made the contrast high, and it has there's also something that naturally happened with the scanner, where there was there's another thing called flicker. So the frame lets light in. It's the frame's opening and shutting, and older cameras tend toward having more flicker. So you hear some people calling movie flickers because especially the older hand crank had
That's
more.
what I noticed in some of the trailer.
Yeah, and there were two things that it made a genuine flicker, and that's not digital effect, but one of it had something to do with the way it was captured for the digital capture with the 35 millimeter digital scanner, which we could correct and did correct in certain areas, but we didn't correct it in that area because it added a certain flicker. But then the Zeman thing had more flicker in the 1868, 1888 parts. But even the 1918 part had the flicker a bit from whatever it was that the scanner was doing. It would not be considered desirable, and it would be something you'd have to correct digitally. But I could see it and I liked it, and it's what we were after anyhow. So there are certain contrast things. It works. I mean, it doesn't really look like Technicolor, but it has a quality. There are qualities that we tried to get to my eye, and it's the thing that's amazing about 35 millimeter. My first two films were shot on 16 millimeter film, which is a little less than half the width of 35 millimeter film, and that's great. I love 16, Super 16. Super 16 is a great point in time right now for Super 16 because of digitization, and the grain has gotten so perfected, really, by Kodak now. It's almost invisible, but you want grain for the film effect. So in a certain way, looking at Super 16 now, blown up, almost resembles 35 from decades ago in terms of the grain structure. Our contemporary 35 millimeter film has a much smaller grain structure than films, say, from the 1930s. But that being said, I've actually started shooting another production on Super 16. This is the first one. I shouldn't talk about it, but it's one that's based on a book, and from the 1800s. And for various reasons, it makes sense to be shooting in Super 16.
The movie I did with Kansas Bowling, she shot in 16.
Yes, Kansas is in the film, and she shoots on. I don't know if she's shooting on regular or Super 16.
Yeah, I'm not positive either.
I think she's shooting on regular 16, but I remember talking to her about her camera. She got a camera at some point. Yeah, but I appreciate that Kansas always shoots on film, and she was helpful in multiple ways. She actually was just helping on the film at first. She was helping with like sound and stuff. But as I made the film, the spooky action at a distance part of the film, Kansas was perfect for a particular role in that. So she played a part.
I'm really grateful to Kansas. I've been in a few things that's always comedic, and she cast me as a very dark role, a serial rapist, kidnapper, and I don't. It's very. It's something I've never done before, and it was an amazing experience with her.
Yeah. Kansas is great. I appreciate that. She's funded her films herself. I suggested she continued doing that because she was talking about getting funding for her film, and I know how the film industry is. They don't care about this stuff at all. Like there is a corporate interest in corporate, I'll say it, propaganda. That is what it is. I mean, there are good filmmakers that are very skilled, and they have done so much good work to cartwheel their way through. And there are some contemporary filmmakers that actually are not making corporate propaganda, but that is a skill set I don't think I would be good at doing. I would like to, but I don't. I like what I'm interested in doing, and if I have to be dealing with, some kind of corporate whatever, I stand up and applaud anybody that can actually go through the system and have something that is of quality come out. That isn't corporate propaganda. It does happen, but so rarely. Kansas had done her first film, and I said, she wanted to get funding, and other people that she knew were getting funding, and she wasn't getting funding. And I said, you should just fund another film again. And she did. She did. And I do think that's the right way to go. And then, I mean, what usually happens then is the corporate, if somebody will make a first-time film or an early film, and they're scouted by the corporate, because they want good filmmakers. Somebody makes a good film, they want somebody that can do well, and then it'll be, well, we want this kind, maybe not that thing that you're wanting to do, but if you can do something along these lines. And the filmmakers, they want a distribution. They want to make a movie, get paid, and not have to pay for it
and have it seen.
All of it's understandable, but slowly it erodes and turns into just corporate propaganda. There are those very few that somehow are able to navigate through it. And
do you have any like modern filmmakers that you do like? You mentioned that you do, but
people always want to talk about it. I get a little wary of talking about it because I work in the business.
Sure, and you don't want to leave someone out too, because they're like, hey,
then if I say something that somebody's not on that, then I feel
I got you. Even if you didn't mean to not mention them, I understand.
But I mean, in the 21st century, I still feel like Lynch and Herzog have made some of the best films. I recently saw The Master. I'd meant to see it when it came out. That was shot on, what is it, 60 millimeter or 65? I'm forgetting, but it's a big film format, and it was playing at, or is it 70 millimeter? I get mixed. I'm at right now. This is my first 35 millimeter film, so I don't know all the technical details of the larger formats. But so I went and saw that projected at the Academy Museum in Los Angeles. It's the only film I've seen. It was the first film I've seen projected at that theater. It was good too. The nice venue, and I was very impressed. It was The Master by Paul Thomas Anderson. I was very impressed by that. That was beautiful filmmaking. The performances by Philip Seymour Hoffman and by Joaquin Phoenix, and all of the characters in it. All of the acting, the way the storytelling worked, which I thought was and I mean the cinematography, the production design. It was a beautifully balanced and rendered movie. But the structure was interesting to me because it in a certain way of his films, that's my favorite one that I've seen of his films, of Paul Thomas Anderson, because structurally I couldn't critique the structure because it really was a character study. So the way that it I don't want to say meandered, because that sounds lazy, but the way that it flowed was organically beautiful, and then it was supported by the score. It was just a very well balanced movie, and I've liked a number of films by Gaspar Noé. I thought Enter the Void, and he's done some interesting work. There's other filmmakers, but of the 21st century, those are a few films that I think of that are good. But there's other things, and like I say, I don't like to do it because I work in the industry.
I understand.
But there are good films out there. It's always true. There's always going to be good films somewhere or another, and all over the world. Who knows where they're coming from? Part of why I like going to the Museum of Modern Art is because I'm pretty much guaranteed that it's curated in a way, and I'm going to see something of interest and value. And I don't mind if something's today 5, 10, 20, 100 years old. If there's something interesting in it, I'll get something out of it. And generally, I find something interesting there.
You mentioned Sundance. Did you think about doing festivals for Know You're Wrong? Or did you
I have, but yes. But even when I submitted What Is It? And it is fine, everything is fine to Sundance, I didn't know if it would get accepted. But even, what is that, 20 years ago,
right?
It's changed. And festivals are businesses, understandably. So I've researched it a fair amount. Festivals are great. But like a lot of what's happening in the world is there's a corporatization that happens even in festivals. So, but there are certain festivals that are not like that. But I'm very isolated. It's hard to know who is what. And I'm not against going to festivals. If there's a festival that wants me to come with the film, I'll go to it most likely. But there's also what I've experienced with the festivals. Sundance was great because it was a great experience for both of the films, because I'd never done that. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I thought, oh, this might be kind of bad, but it wasn't. It was very helpful, and it was helpful to get. I didn't get reviews at Sundance. There were people that would write, but they were like gossip columnist types. It wasn't until I started touring with the film that professional journalists, professional cinema reviewers, critics, saw the film and started giving proper reviews, which were much better reviews, actually. I don't mean just that they were better, like they liked it more, but I mean that they were more
like in depth.
They were cinematically educated, and whereas the people that were writing about it in Sundance were just kind of like, I don't know what, but it was good. It was a great experience. It was very worthwhile. But then I realized, well, you don't make money on the festivals. They take.
I've had my first film at a festival, and it's expensive even just to submit them. And then very expensive to go to all of them. Yeah.
Right. So festival, there is value if you're going to get reviewed, an award, because that's a sponsorship of some kind. So and What Is It? I did go to other festivals, and I've gotten multiple awards for my first two films. What Is It? Got best narrative film at the Ann Arbor Film Festival, which is the oldest what they call experimental film festival in the world, and that was a great festival. I got an award for both of the films at Sitges in Spain. For one was the Midnight Extreme. I'm forgetting what the other thing. Everything is Fine got something slightly different than Midnight Extreme, both at Sitges. And Spain, of course, Sitges is very close to. Spain has Buñuel, Salvador Dali, Miro. There's a great amount of the formal surrealists that went up to France came from Spain. So Spain has a great understanding of surrealism, which my films I tend toward liking surrealism. The surrealist aspects in my movies. What is it particularly? I was very much thinking about Luis Buñuel, reading his autobiography, In Conversations With, and looking at his first two films, Un Chien Andalou and L'Âge d'Or, and what is it has aspirations toward that very specific capital S surrealism of that period. The second film is, and this film, they both have surrealism aspects within them, but I wasn't. It's different from the specificity of the surrealism that I was looking to get within What Is It,
and
which is a little more political.
Your new movie is?
No. Surrealism, with the capital S surrealism. What is it? I won't say that's political, but there are political aspects to surrealism because, how Buñuel puts it in his,
you can hide it. Yeah.
No, it's strange. Like it. What Buñuel said in his autobiography was all of the men or people, I should say, but most, I think. Well, I won't even get into that. But all of the people that were surrealists with a capital S in France in the late 20s and 1930s, he said all of those people that had books published, movies made, paintings in museums, what have you, those young people looking at what became of surrealism as this art movement would universally all think of themselves as failures, because what surrealism with a capital S in the 1920s and 30s of Paris was a political organization. It was not a art movement. It became an art movement, but they were very serious about changing the world politically with surrealism, because there were all these cafes in Paris. So one cafe would have the communists, another cafe would have the fascists, another cafe would have the anarchists, another cafe would have the social democrats, whatever. And the surrealists were at it. In fact, I went to at least one of the cafes. There may have been multiple, but I went to one of them, which was interesting. It didn't look or feel like, it didn't look like Cantor's Deli in Los Angeles, but something about the lighting and that it was open late and kind of had a comfort food atmosphere. It almost reminded me of Cantor's in that way. Not that it was serving the same food or that it looked like it, but there was something about the atmosphere. I could see where it was a place where people would sit and talk, and it was interesting. Yeah. But Buñuel also talks about that one of the members in the surrealist group convinced him that the print, or maybe it was the negative, I'm not sure, of Un Chien Andalou, his first film, he convinced Buñuel that if this was really the subversive kind of material that it was intended to be, that it needed to be, that the fact that it had a commercial aspect to it meant it couldn't really be a surrealist piece of art, and the only thing to do to cement it as actual true surrealism would be to destroy it. And Buñuel said he was agreeing. He agreed. He was about to destroy the film. He was on his way to destroy the film, and so another member of the surrealist group came up and said, "Don't do that! Don't do that! That doesn't matter. This should be preserved." And luckily, he talked Buñuel out of it. So I'm aware of hypocrisy of any group. I don't like groups. Individuals are great, and an individual that believes in anything, they're fine when they're. George Carlin talks about it. Like when people are individuals, they're great, but whether it becomes a cultural, religious, political thing, it starts causing problems when everybody says, no, it's got to be this way, or we kill anybody that doesn't believe that.
Yeah.
That's a bad problem.
Which is very much today. But
Yeah, it's really happening right now. It's very, very frightening.
Since you don't distribute your movies, you have to, which there's a specialness to that. Like you have to come and see.
Let me just interrupt.
Yeah.
I do distribute the films. This is the way I distribute.
Okay, fair enough. That's a better way to say it. You don't. There won't be streaming. There won't be a physical release.
I've never released my films digitally,
right.
And there's multiple reasons for that. For one thing, there's this thing called fair use, which is very dangerous. And once you release something digitally, somebody can claim that they're using it for review, and they'll essentially steal your movie, or I particularly with my first film, What Is It? Because there was I knew I was designed with controversial, and this was before cancel culture. I knew before cancel culture this film is the kind of film that would get me canceled, even though it wasn't called being canceled. I knew it would cause problems. So, and that's part of why I've never put it out digitally, and it protects it. There's also people with Down syndrome in the film that if it was just taken out of context and people would put it up and make fun of the film plus or the people in it, which I wanted to protect that. So I'm very glad that I've never put it out that way. The second film, Everything Is Fine, I've never put either of them out digitally. I'd like both of the films to be more seen, but there's a problem with the piracy. So one has to be very careful about it. I have not figured out what the best thing to do is, but the films were made to be seen up on the big screen.
I'm someone who goes to movies every week because
yes,
weird movie. Like you said, I like to go see stuff that I've seen a million times, but if I see it in the theater in 35 millimeter, it's a different deal. And I actually go and see some big blockbustery kind of movies. I try to see pretty much everything. But
yeah, it is a very different experience seeing something big in the theater with the proper sound. I mean, and then there's the movement toward the purity of 35 millimeter projection as well, which I also understand. My first two films I shot on regular 16 with a digital intermediate, and then they had 35 millimeter prints of the films, and that's what I toured around with. The new film, I have not yet made the 35 millimeter print of it. It was shot on 35. I plan to make a 35 millimeter print. The main thing is that there's the way color adheres to film or infuses, whatever the proper terminology, is different from digital. But by the fact that the film was shot on 35, it is a 35 millimeter experience, because you're essentially projecting, for lack of a better word, the negative. The digital print is the least generations removed that you're going to get from the negative. Basically, it's the scan of the negative. But I know that there's the film what was it, Oppenheimer, where the filmmaker stuck all did not use digital in any part of the film that you see. So I would assume they did the offline editing and with the SMPTE time code, and then they cut the negative like they used to do, and then made prints from the negative when it was projected as a film print. I know there were also digital showings, and most theaters now are showing digitally. It's something I've been contemplating as well, because I've toured around with the 35 millimeter prints in suitcases, big, heavy prints. But now the films, a lot of the venues that do have 35 millimeter, not all of them, but some of them, they'll have it in, if they have multiple screens, they'll have it in the smaller theater. And so then you have to weigh, do you want people to have less people to have the 35 millimeter print experience, or more people to see the film in a certain venue? But I am planning to do a 35 millimeter print of the film. But also on my first two films, at some point, I paused for the pandemic. I couldn't tour, and I toured straight from 2005 to 2020 every year, even in 2020. My last show was February of 2020, and then the pandemic happened. And then I realized, well, I'll take the natural pause that we're experiencing and I'll start touring again when I have the new print. Little did I know I was still going to be working for 5 years. Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But so October 2nd, what is that?
Yeah.
4 days from now?
Yeah, not very long from now. I do have a question though, because none of us are here forever. So do you have plans? What happens to your movies when you're no longer here?
Yeah, it is something. My father who's in the new movie and has a writing credit on the film, just died in March. And the film, this is also the part that I don't want to talk about too much, but the film has a lot of contemplations about a lot of things. And I'm curious to see what people think or get from it. But the fact that my father died in the year that it's finally released is, the film's subtitle is Spooky Action at a Distance, and it has something to do with not just that, but it's very, Spooky Action at a Distance is an appropriate title for that thematic part of the film. So I'm certainly thinking about it. My father was 90, almost 93 when he died. And my mother was 88 when she died in 2016. Who knows? We don't know how long we have. If I live to be a similar age as my parents, I have some time left, but anything can happen. Who knows? I feel healthy. Keep my fingers crossed.
It wasn't.
I don't know. Who knows? But I've contemplated things like a not-for-profit organization, because I have investments basically in properties that the idea is, but mainly the property in the Czech Republic is been made to be, for lack of a better word, a boutique studio. I have 18,000 square feet of sets that I've made in 2 former horse stables or farm buildings right next to the main Chateau building. And that's where I have 18,000 square feet of sets that I had designed specifically. I won't call them generic, but that's what I don't have in the this particular trailer. There's big sets pieces that are interesting looking. I'm going to put photos, and I'll cut another trailer together that is from a different perspective that might show more of that kind of stuff. But I can utilize that for productions later with slight alterations, and it can look quite different. So generic, in the sets, 1/3 of one big building. Again, it's 18,000 square feet, so that would mean 9,000 square feet for each building. Approximately 1/3 is a cityscape from around the 1918 is the look of it. Then there's a big bridge. You see the poster, it sort of has a facsimile of the bridge, because the actual images in the film are from different angles, so it had to be sort of reconstructed for the poster. And that has a backdrop and a way that a silhouette of a train can go across it. Then next to that was a train station that had a moving caboose. We really just moved for one shot. And then there is a hill with a well with backdrops. Backdrops are used throughout these things. That's Atelier 1. Then Atelier 2 is underneath the bridge with water, then the top of the train, then next to that, the interior of a train, then a grand room with marble floors, and there was statues were put in it for the shot, and then for the scenes. And then next to that is an office that kind of turns on wheels that has a backdrop, then another area with water that's sort of for a different shot that looks like it's from under the bridge. Then there's a jail cell, and then another room that has an alleyway that sort of matches to the cityscape. Then there were a couple of outside places that were used for a couple of shots with backdrops for a couple of other scenes, a dam and anyhow. So I have other spaces I could utilize, but these are all things that, you know, a cityscape, an alleyway, train station, offices, jail cell, bridges. These are things that can be reutilized in different ways with slight different. So I've put a lot of time, effort, and money into this. This was a life decision. It was not, when I bought the property in 2003, we're in 2025. I knew this was a life thing. It wasn't, it was a commitment. And I would only recommend somebody buy a Czech Chateau if they're doing exactly what I'm doing, if they have an industrial use for it, because it was an industrial building for agriculture or other things, but I'm using it for a different industrial reason. But in the long run, if I'm able to, I've got to make the films faster. This was absurd how long this has taken. And I have ideas of how to make things go faster, but we'll see. But the yes, I would like this to be turned into a not-for-profit organization. I've had thoughts about it that would be something like, it would be called Film As, I mean, I shouldn't talk about it too much because I haven't actualized it, but it would be a grant for filmmakers to make. I've written out what it would be, has something to do with surrealism. It has something to do with hero's journey structure, as to what the guidelines would be, and that every number of years people would be able to utilize the facilities or other properties, and as to how to be able to make films that are not in the corporate structure. Mm-hmm. But then how does one organize so that runs properly if I'm not around? And that I started thinking, I've never had children, and I don't know how properly paternal I am, but it was the first time I ever started thinking, oh, I should have an heir. See how I do these things, grow up. But then that's not a good reason to have a child.
No.
Pressure.
Yeah.
And then what if they hate filmmaking, or they hate you, or whatever? Then then you have to have multiple children. It's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know how all of it will work out. But this is something I've had in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Did your dad see a finished version of the movie?
Yes. Yeah, he didn't see the finished version, mm-hmm. but he saw it at various times. But like I said, my father it was not easy dealing with him for the writing. I don't think he ever understood what I was trying to do. But
was he a more traditional movie fan?
Well, it's hard to describe, but I mean, in certain ways, I'm a traditional movie fan. You know, it's like there are all kinds of films that are so-called traditional.
I would be the same way, honestly.
Yeah. So I like good structure. I love surrealism, but I would also argue that Buñuel's Un Chien Andalou or L'Âge d'Or incorporates structure without even attempting it. It's something that is so innately within our Homo sapien brains to interpret that. It's deep within us, and even if somebody is attempting to do things which are not falling into a certain kind of structure, it's just how stories are. that will happen, and then you can bring many of the archetypal elements that someone like Joseph Campbell, who coined the hero's journey term, and with his great 1948 book Hero with a Thousand Faces, goes through these structures which have been many people have analyzed, and there's different ways of talking about structure. There's something to it. It's fascinating. One of the most fascinating topics there is. And I forget why we were talking about that now, but
just like what kind of films your dad was into, and the
oh,
idea
right, with the structure.
Really
well, the structure was a part of it. It even makes its way into the film in the spooky action at a distance part of the film, with my father and I talking about it, or arguing about it is the right word, which is played. It has humor in it. I mean, it's humorous to watch my father and I argue about this stuff. But I mean, it was in reality, it was intense arguing, which we replicate on the film to an extent. You'll see the film in Boston.
Yeah. In your book.
You'll see a bit what I'm talking about when you see the film, but because it's addressed within the film. So the initial structure that I wrote out was almost more of there were always several generations of fathers and sons, and at different time periods, and things happened within it that recurred. And it was less about a hero's journey structure, and it was more about, in the initial outline that I showed to my father. And I still would not be against having made that film. My father did not like that. He didn't understand what it was, which, fair enough. But basically, I knew this was going to happen before, which is why I started working with Mike Pelagi, because I just knew my father. I know my father. I knew what he would do. And then he did. And then I said, all right, well, you can, make suggestions about lines and all that. Of course, it became much more than that. Now, the thing is he really did think about it. He really wanted it to be good. And he did come up with good things. And they are in the film. And but much of what he wanted was sort of early and middle structure elements. He didn't think of, he wasn't, and this has less to do with whether it's classical or not. He was thinking about character to a certain extent, which is fine. It's understandable. Like I said, like the Paul Thomas Anderson film, The Master, it's more about character than it is about plot. And I thought that was very successful in that. My father felt, I think, the original screenplay might have been, I won't even say it was about plot, but it was less necessarily about character, and it was more about tableaus of differentiation of times and generations, and things that were passing between those generations. But he wanted there to be, which is understandable. He wanted there to be more of a thorough, but he wasn't thinking about the finality. He was focused more on the first and second acts, but he wouldn't have used that term. He wasn't studying structure. He had read a lot of books, but anyhow, I mean, it was good what he did contribute. There are really good things in the film that had to do with, which came from his concepts. So, that's why finally at the end, when the spooky action at a distance, I had to correlate everything so it it became more cohesive, which was different from what I had initiated, then different from what my father had contributed, but it was a way of kind of correlating it all together to work. It wasn't easy. It was not easy. But I hope when people see it that they will be able to feel that there's some work and thought in this. It isn't just a random arbitrary thing, but it's also not, I know it's not a simple, it's 85 minutes. There's a lot compacted into those 85 minutes. And it's, in a certain way, there's more information than is possible to process watching it the first time, which my first film in particular, What Is It, also is like that. And what I've experienced when I've toured around is that people will come back and watch it again, and it serves in that function. This film is more the production design. There's a lot more money that went into the production, but and even a lot more time. What Is It? I took many years to shoot as well. I've never made a film of the 3 films I've made as a filmmaker. Not one of them was shot in a single production. Every one of them was shot in multiple production segments. What Is It was the second longest, and this one is the longest. The shortest of all of them was the second film, It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine, which was shot in 3 production segments in over a 2-year time period. So that was, for me, that was fast.
Yeah.
And that started shooting that's shot in the year 2000, 2001, but that didn't premiere in Sundance till 2007. But that's also partially because I shot that film and What Is It? What Is It wasn't done when I shot It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine, mainly because the main actor and writer had a health issue and he could have died. And I'm very glad that I made that film. I'm proud of all the films in different ways, but that one is a very, very unique movie.
Mm-hmm. I know you said you directed your dad before, but you had never acted with him in anything?
Never.
Before?
This is the only film he and I've ever been on screen acting together, and it was we'd never acted together before that, which was it was interesting. That was interesting. I did learn certain things. There's certain things when you act with somebody, there's an energetic element that you're looking into somebody's eyes in more than in a certain way you will in real life. And there's something that happens when you're acting with somebody that you can feel, particularly if somebody's a good actor, being in the moment in some way. There are things that it's interesting. So it's like, what is it that you know about your own parent from acting? My father taught acting, but I never formally studied with my father. I studied with other acting teachers. I'm sure I picked things up, but no, we had never acted together until this movie.
Was he the one who wanted you to act, or was it something that you were just
no? I what happened was no, my parents never. My mother was also a dancer and actress. She primarily a dancer, and she retired when I was born. And my parents remained married. They never divorced, so they remained married their whole lives. But and I was born. I'm in New York right now. I was born at Lenox Hill Hospital. Across, you can hear the sirens. I was born across. I'm near the Central Park. I can see it, and I was born across the park. I can probably see from here. The building might be blocked, but I was born at Lenox Hill Hospital. So my initial memories of life are all of Manhattan, but we moved from New York to Los Angeles when I was 3 3/4 years old, because my father was getting more work as an actor in the film industry and in Los Angeles, and so we relocated there. And my initial interest was, and this is when I'm really young, 8, 9 years old. I thought I wanted to maybe be a geologist, that with the idea that I'd wear a pith helmet, have a chisel, and hammer and break open rocks and find beautiful crystals. And
Mhm.
but then I realized that's not what a geologist would really probably do. I'd probably get a job finding gas deposits for a multinational corporation, and that didn't sound as fun or interesting to me. But I saw how the industry, the film industry, worked, and I'm not really a natural born actor. My father was a natural born actor, extrovert, like being out and around people, energy, very, very different. Like when we worked together, the way I work was so very different than the way my father worked in terms of preparation and approach to how things are done. But I recognized, I felt it was something I could do. And so I was, in a strange way, thinking of it at a young age that, well, this is something I could do. But I wasn't thinking artistically. I was interested in the arts. I was interested, I already liked surrealism, Dali, visual arts, but I was not equating that with movies or television. I didn't go see movies as much as I saw much more television, but I'd go see movies as well. But I at that point, I was just thinking, well, maybe I'll be in a commercial if I get an agent, or be on TV, maybe a movie. I wasn't really thinking about it that much. And I did start, I got an agent when I was 13. When I told my parents, I thought that was something that I wanted to, that I maybe could do. My father said he took it as a compliment, because although it's hard to imagine, but like my father wasn't super famous. He wasn't super wealthy. He made a living, particularly in the 1970s. The economy was very different. So my father made a living. We had a house, lower middle class. The area that I grew up in, now the area is very nice. When we were there, there was some gang activity. It was a little bit scary. Not terrible, but a little bit. But I went to a private school from 1st to 9th grade. So I wasn't in the public school system until the last 3 years, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. But anyhow, my father said he took it as a compliment, because there were times he didn't know if he was going to work again, if he was going to have to get a job driving a taxi or what. He didn't. So he felt like the fact that I didn't think of this as terrible, that things seemed okay, and they weren't terrible. It was okay. But his internal struggle, which I could feel. I'm an only child. I was raised as an only child. So when you're an only child, your parents' problems are your problems. So I was aware of the struggle of the industry. And but I also could see how it functioned. So like I said, my father thought of it as a compliment. And then when I said it, my parents were supportive. And my mother came to me with an ad. I'd gotten one commercial when I was 13 for Coca-Cola, I was very excited. And on the day I was supposed to shoot the Coca-Cola commercial, I genuinely got stomach flu. And I don't normally get it. And I was really sick. And I wasn't nervous. I was excited to go do this commercial. I'm still mad I couldn't do the commercial. But then, I don't know, I was 14, so it was a little bit later. My mother came to me, I think it was an ad in Variety. It was one of the trades. I think my parents got Variety. And it was an ad for children who could sing and dance, which was an audition for The Sound of Music, the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in downtown LA. And I said to my mother, well, I'm not a singer or dancer. And she said, you can do it. But I knew my mother actually, when my parents were married, my mother had a more successful career. She had done a lot of mainly musicals on Broadway, off Broadway. She had understudied, what's her name? Gwen Verdon, who was Bob Fosse's wife. And I'm pretty sure he was the choreographer for Damn Yankees. And my mother understudied Gwen Verdon for that. And then later she toured playing Lola in that. So she had a success and had made more money, I think, than my father had made when they were married. But then when I was born, she retired. And but I knew that this is what she had done, so I understood that she wasn't just, my mother wasn't like, I could tell it wasn't just an arbitrary thing. And I realized, okay, well, I guess I don't really have to be a professional singer dancer to go do this thing. And it was a cattle call. You know, there's hundreds of people all going in and out of the room at these rooms at Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. And Michael Kidd was the director, who was a choreographer. I think he directed films as well, but he did some fairly well-known dance sequences for musicals. And is it what? Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. There's one where they're on the town singing, and they're in New York. I think it's with Frank Sinatra. I can't remember. Anyhow, he did a lot of. He was the director of the thing, and I just kept getting whittled. It kept getting whittled down, and I got it. And then 2 years, and then I did that for a number of months. That was my first professional job, really, because I couldn't do that Coca-Cola commercial. And then a couple of years later, my mother came again. I had done some other commercials, I think, at that point. Then my mother came again to me a couple of years later when I was 16, and again with an ad for a cattle call. And I was studying acting at that time. I started studying acting at 15 for, it was called, it's improvisation with technique, as opposed to improvisational comedy. So you're using techniques that have to do with internal sort of states that, you know, it's not necessarily Stanislavski, but related to that kind of concept, that kind of theater game. But so I was very comfortable with improvisation, and the advertisement said it was for teenagers, like kids, 16 years old, whatever, or 18-year-olds that could play 16-year-olds, and that was it was teenagers who could sing and improvise. I wasn't really a singer, but I knew I could improvise. So I went in, and again, it was a whittling down, and I got it. And it's still out there. It's not a particular, it was a pilot. It wasn't particularly great or anything, but it was a good experience. But yeah.
When do you become the cinephile? Like, why you're?
Oh, yeah. When I was 16, when I learned how to drive, I had seen the preview for Eraserhead at the New Art when I was 14, and with the school, they were showing, the school I went to is called Merman School, not Mormon. Merman was the name of the doctor who started the school. It was a school for gifted children. And now gifted is starting to mean something else. At the time, gifted meant children that scored over a certain IQ point. Now gifted is starting to mean something completely different than it meant then. It's a bit confusing. But anyhow, so we would go to the New Art after we'd read a certain book, and we'd see the books that we had read projected. And for some reason, this was 1977 or 78, and the projectionist had the coming attractions, and there was Eraserhead played for all these. I mean, the coming attraction for Eraserhead played for all these 14-year-olds. And
Yeah,
I don't know why they did that, but I'm really glad they did, because I looked at it. I didn't know what it was, but I was fascinated by it. And I was aware of surrealism to an extent at that point, but I didn't know what that, I didn't think it was, I mean, there's a differentiation between capital S surrealism of Buñuel and a lowercase surrealist American like David Lynch, which is great, but different than the formal surrealists of the 1920s and 30s. But in any case, I didn't know what it was. I thought, is this a movie from the 50s, some strange movie? Whatever it was, I thought it was really interesting. And I thought, when I learn how to drive, I'm going to go see this movie if it's still playing there. I knew it was a midnight movie, but that was a relatively new thing. And luckily it was. And I'd learned how to drive. And I was going to see different movies at the revival houses. This would be 1980. So, movies from the 70s or 60s or earlier, in 20s, what have you. And I would see all kinds of, it was initially kind of to see acting and what I should be looking at that was for that. But I was seeing all kinds of movies that's when I realized, they're film as art. I mean, I'd already been familiar with Kubrick. I'd realized Kubrick was the first director where I'd seen, like I said, 2001, when I was 4 or 5 at the drive-in movie theater, which I just liked. I didn't think much about it. I thought that's what movies are like, this kind of great thing, strange thing. And then, it was also, there were a lot of monkeys and apes in that time period. Like the Planet of the Apes, I also saw at that same drive-in movie theater. And then on television, there was a television show, like a morning show for kids called Lancelot Link.
Actually, my brother's 9 years older, and I don't know why, but I watch that all the time.
Say that again. You're what, older?
My brother's 9 years older, so actually he showed me Eraserhead when I was a very little kid, and but Lancelot Link is something not many other people I know remember.
What year were you born?
76.
Oh, so you saw it later. Yeah, I saw it when
but it was something that my brother had me watch because he was like,
it's really strange. It's very strange.
Yeah.
These chimpanzees that are dressed up in clothing and speaking. People did voices, and then there was the Monkeys, which was a syndicated show, but it would show around that time. Of course, it's just the name of the band. But then there was a thing called the Banana Splits, which was a kid show based kind of on the Monkeys, but it was, I think, Sid and Marty Krofft, and they're in costume. I don't think they're monkeys. I think they're dogs.
They're like all different animals, or
something. Maybe one of them's a monkey. But there was there's a lot of stuff with monkeys and apes in the late 60s and early 70s, and there was a lot of psychedelia in children's programs.
A lot of that Marty Krofft stuff.
Yes. The Lidsville, very, very strange psychedelic. So everything was like that when I was a little kid. But why were we talking about that?
Just becoming like when you become a cinephile,
Oh yeah. It was. I wasn't equating that with art. Now I would see that more clearly. But once I started driving to all the revival houses, then I became very excited about that, and that's what I thought I was stepping into. As an actor I started working more in films in the early 80s, and I wanted unusual, thoughtful, sort of rebellious stuff that was making questions about questionable authority. And then as I was in it, I was seeing where are these questions? It had changed. It had changed between the 70s and even early 80s. But you look back at the early 80s, and compared to now, that was still more questioning or controversial or whatever than it's been a continuous tightening of corporate interests. So I could feel that it was important for me to make my own films more and more. I was always interested in it. I'd made some Super 8 movies here and there when I was a kid, but there was another project I worked on for quite a while before I shot What Is It, that was shot on video, and I should put it together, but for various reasons I haven't. It's based on one of my books called The Backward Swing, and I should do something with that. There was actually quality to it, but the films have taken precedence.
So when you go see your movies, when you go see No, You're Wrong, what does that entail? So you see the movie itself.
Well, I haven't seen No, You're Wrong with an audience yet, so that I'll be very curious. I've seen people report on various online things. There's so much that's written about me online that is so untrue.
I'll be honest. The first time when I had you on, I had people like warn me, like, "Oh, he's this," and then I talked to you and I was like, "Oh, I thought we got along really well, and I thought it went
there's
great.
there's several things. One of them, which I've still never really talked about, is early stuff that I did in media, which was like talk shows. What are they? They're entertainment shows.
Yeah.
What's entertaining? I mean, is it entertaining to have an actor sit and talk about?
Yeah, right.
Whatever.
I grew up, when I was a kid, I watched all the late night talk shows.
Yeah.
And they were the ones that stand out are people who you could tell weren't just walking through the motion.
So the thing is if you do anything that is not the standard of in something like that, people don't know what you're doing, especially if it's not explained. So there's that. I had the first kind of my original concept for media promotion as an actor was to never do any promotion at all, ever, and just be an actor that would come in and do parts in movies, and people would go, "Oh, who's that person?" and never have any kind of promotional thing. But then when River's Edge came out, which was a couple of years, I don't know, within a couple of years of Back to the Future, I hadn't done any promotion until that. And then for whatever reason, because Back to the Future come out not too long before it, I was the person that they wanted to promote it, and I was proud of the film. Of course, at this time, it would be Keanu Reeves. I mean, he would be who would have great success.
I met Daniel Roebuck on the show, who spoke.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. I'm friendly with all the people from River's Edge. It was a very nice experience, and so it became. It was not something I was planning to do. It was the opposite of what I was planning to do. I had nothing worked out for what I was going. I would use the word persona. There's a persona, no matter what anybody says, there is a persona that is worked out one way or another. Even if somebody says they're being completely themselves, their own selves is a persona. We all have a persona in some way or another, and some more than another. I mean, the way I'm talking right now, of course, is completely different to how I would talk in some other situation.
Sure.
So in any case, there's that. Then there was a lawsuit about the second Back to the Future film. There's a producer, Bob Gale, who has made it his commitment that ever since the lawsuit, he has been saying that I'm difficult, essentially. So that has stuck because most people, that was a big movie. And he says it on all these, it's a really cruel thing to have done, to first off have stolen from me, and then to go and purposely, because he did something illegal.
Yeah,
says,
you get blamed for something that he did. Yeah.
But it's to protect himself, because it tries to make it look like I deserve to have my face stolen by him. That's the reason. So, I mean, I'll fight for a good art, but that's normal. Look, any good that's a normal part of the process. But he's making it as that I'm like impossible, and then utilizing whatever kind of persona that I put out for his purposes. So because Back to the Future is such a big movie, and there's been if you look at the original stuff that was said about me before the lawsuit, there was nothing about me being difficult. This is a retaliatory element because he did something illegal, but people believe it because he's a part of the Spielberg, producership.
Did that hurt you?
No way that anybody can do anything illegal or wrong if they're part of this corporate structure that everybody knows. It's whatever. It's like
did that hurt you from getting roles, do you believe?
Well, everything affects everything. I mean, it's like, is it good? It's not good. I don't like it. Why would that be good? But whatever.
Does that also does that affect how you look back at Back to the Future?
Of course.
Because obviously you can't
Of
be,
course.
you want to be proud of it, but at the same time, like,
if only Back to the Future had been made and there was never any sequel, I would be out there, you know, going to the conventions, saying hi. But what they did was heinous. And I mean, you know, there's all the I really shouldn't talk about this stuff because this gets cut out, and then that's the only thing. I should talk about my film. But you know, there was a strike in the Screen Actors Guild about this exact issue. I just happened to experience it. Yes, it wasn't digital, but it's the same issue.
Same idea.
They stole something. That's stealing. It's just black and white. But Bob Gale say, "Oh, he'll do cartwheels." He stole something. He's a thief. I shouldn't talk about this stuff because this is what will get cut out and played, because that's all people, which I really I shouldn't have talked about it. But anyhow, so yes. How can you look at if only that movie existed? There would be. You know, I would say the concepts that I talk, because the reality is, the other thing is, there were positive things that were changed in the film because of my discussions that people never know or talk about. But the film would be different had I not said certain things about things that were good changes that helped the film. If they had some of the things that I had questioned about that were in the script, people would, you know, you see a lot of films from the 80s now where people say, oh, this doesn't pass. There was stuff that I objected, that I had questions about, that they did get rid of, that if it was in the film, people would go, ooh, that's not good. Maybe it would have been cut out if I hadn't said anything, but I was the person that said something, and I've been chastised for it for decades. Whatever. It's 40 years now. This year is. Yes, I'm sure I would have a different feeling about the whole thing. But
yes,
I worked with Robert Zemeckis again. I worked with him on Beowulf. I had a good experience. He actually did something that was positive, whereas Bob Gale is just a lost cause. So, anyhow, let's talk about something else.
Yeah, so I just want to say, when I mean no, you're wrong. I'm going to go see it, and people are going to go see it on October 2nd. What are they going to see? They're going to see the movie itself, and then
first I come out first before the film plays, and I haven't. I actually, within the next few days, I have to redo a slideshow, so it's specific. I have to cut it down because the slideshows before have been an hour, and then the Q&As have usually gone longer than the film. But what is it in particular is very it causes questions. The title is a question, and then it causes questions, and because it's controversial, the film does make people angry. It provokes the audience. So, and that's another reason why I've never put it out. I knew that it was going to be something that was part of this live show where I would be. It was my reaction to the corporate constraints that have happened in the film industry. When I first came out, I said in the last 20 or 30 years, but you know, all these decades, and so. Anyhow, that Q&A went a long time. I don't know how long the Q&A is going to go for the new film. I'll find out on October 2nd, the Museum of Modern Art. That's when I'll see what people are genuinely questioning. But the film was not designed. It's not part of the It trilogy, which is formally about a certain kind of questioning of something. Now, I may have that innately within me anyhow. So the new film may have some of that, but it wasn't designed in that way. But so maybe there'll be less questions. I don't know. But I would say it's a strong art film. So it's not the standard kind of movie that is corporately released right now. I'm assuming I could have gone to various corporations, and I do think the film is of a certain kind of quality that I would have had interest for a standardized release. Maybe not. But I also think the amount of money that I put into it, I don't think they would have wanted to pay the amount of money that I would have needed in order to retain, for it to be of value to me. And to me, it's better as a long-term investment, like I was talking about with my film sets, that I'll never. I did essentially make the money back on my first two films, but not by the box office. I made the money back by what's charged for the live show and for my book sales. So first I come out and I perform the live show. I have to structure what the new live show is going to be on my computer. It's projected on the screen. All of the films, all the books are profusely illustrated. And then I dramatically narrate these different stories. So I'm making it shorter because the new film is longer. So to balance it out, it'll be a shorter slideshow. Then I present the film. Then I come out at the very end of the credits. I say, does anybody have any questions? And then I conduct the Q&A with the audience myself. And for what is it? It's a minimum of an hour and a half. It's the film's only 82 minutes. So the Q&A goes longer than the film. But Noam Chomsky talks about that. He was talking about the concision that has to be used on television. And he talks, I think it's in, what's it called? Manufacture of Consent, his book. But there's a documentary where you can see him talking about it. And he's completely right that what they call the content, the television show, the comedy, the sitcom or talk show, whatever it's going to be, they call that the fill, and then the content is the advertisements between. So that's what the perspective is, and so everything else is the fill to get the advertisement through. But so if you have content, or rather fill, that's distracting from the content, that's a problem. And if you have if you're then interviewed, or you're making a statement as to that's contrary to the status quo, if you agree with the status quo, all you have to say is, yeah, I agree. And everybody says, yeah, we agree. But if you have a question about the status quo, you can't just say, no, I don't agree, because then everybody goes, what's your problem? Why don't you agree with everybody else? So then you have to give a reason and an example and extrapolate, and that takes longer. It takes a longer time to have a constructed reasoning for why something needs to be questioned or contrasted. So it does take longer. So then the way Chomsky talked about it, it was put in the context of somebody calling one of the executives at a news station and saying, why don't you ever have Noam Chomsky on? He's great, very intelligent, and has questions about foreign policy and media content. And the executive, it's on a recording, legally on a recording, because in certain states that's illegal to do, but the guy is aware of it. So he says, well, I don't know who this guy is. And then he kind of contradicts himself. He says, yeah, I've seen Noam Chomsky. He sounds like he's from Neptune or something, or some planet. But no, it's because Chomsky is contrasting what the corporate need is. They don't want those questions to happen which actually, I think in the United States, I'm not exactly sure of the legality of it is, but a corporation is legally bound to make money for the shareholders. They can't do things that are going to, which is understandable in a way, but when you extrapolate that out, that means everything that's corporately involved must make money for the corporation. And all media outlets, whether it's the distribution or the corporate funding, are subsidiaries to that corporate interest. So you essentially it would almost be illegal by the U.S. government because to make content that contrasts the corporate value, because that would put the shareholders at stake. So really, if you're really wanting to question something, you've got to do something truly independently. I will often say a so-called independent film, because if something is not made with the studio system, they say, oh, it's an independent. But no, it isn't, because if you're seeing it distributed, that's corporately distributed. So it has to be vetted within the distribution system. I mean, the thing is like I say, the new film, I don't think that I have anything in it that it's not viscerally anti-corporate the way my first two films. What is it was designed to be viscerally anti or counter to corporate interests. But the new film, it isn't viscerally there. It might be in there just because I have that in me. And I'm not doing this just to be a negative thing. I truly think it's bad for humans. Like we're trapped right now in a corporate situation that is not good for the entire species and society. I like to believe that something can happen, but it certainly isn't looking like that. Things
I
are
think it's
getting more and more. Yeah, I tend toward being anti-authoritarian, no matter what it is, whether it's from the left or right. Both left and right can be authoritarian, and whatever form of government or whatever form of religion, if it's authoritarian, I really protest.
What's really interesting, because this is a conversation I have with my friends, is it used to be young people were always anti-authority, I think. Had that in them for the most part. But I see almost the opposite now. I see a lot of, when I see people online, it seems like young people are very pro like corporation and authority.
Well, it's propaganda works. Yeah. Propaganda works. It's effective. And it's why I've felt it was important to continue doing the things that I do, because I don't know any other way to get the word out, so to speak. And I'm not pretending to believe I'm going to be very effective. It's just I happen to enjoy making the films. It's okay taking the time. It's interesting. I actually do like when I have the book signing is when I have the Q&A, which is there's an interesting interaction in that. But the Q&As, at least in the first two films, I know there's a certain kind of question that's happening or is going to happen. And I know a certain amount of questions, topics that I can talk about related to the question. So I probably for each of the films have at least 3 or 4 hours of set things I could talk about. And depending on the questions, I'll talk about that. Every once in a while, there'll be a new question that I'll talk about something new. That happens more rarely. But with the new film, the first showing that I have, that will be my first Q&A with it. I don't know what I'm very interested to see. So I have a genuine curiosity as to what, because of the way the films are designed, I know that different people will have different reactions. And it's curious to me to see what, I have my interpretation, but I don't want to impose that upon people because they might have something that is triggered in their head that's way more interesting than what I'm thinking about in my head. So I'll be very curious to see, but the people might be very clear. There are certain things in both of the films that I intended that many people do get. And then there's other things that I intended or that were in my head that people never think about. And then there's all kinds of things that I've heard people say that were interesting that I had not thought of, but I was glad that that interpretation came forth. So but I mean, the new film actually, in a certain way, the story is to me, it's a very standard hero's journey structure in a way. But I've also known that there's confusing aspects to it, so I've leaned into it. So I don't know what people will get. I don't know. We'll see.
Interesting. And model Caitlin Stickles. I saw her in the trailer, so I actually was interested, and I looked her up and was reading about her. So it's her first movie. Like, how did she get involved in the movie? Was she someone you knew beforehand?
No, the way I knew Caton was through Mika Mae Jones, who's also in the movie. Mika was friends with Caton, and I had already known Mika was going to be in the film, and we were talking and whatever and she showed me a photograph of her friend, and I said, wow, I was looking for people that were identifiable, because there's different generations that it goes back and forth, and Caton has a really unique face, and somebody that you remember that her face. And I talked to her, and she's a very confident together person, and she did a great job. And I think she had already started doing modeling, and then Charlotte, who did the scoring for the film, I showed Charlotte some cuts of the film a long time ago, and Charlotte put Caton in some of her music videos that Charlotte was directing. So I know Caton's done a lot of work, which is good.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to see it. We'll put the link up for all the different. Are you going to add more dates? Do you know, or like?
Oh
the
yeah, I began touring in 2005 with What Is It, and like I say, and then I added 2007. I added the two, so I started touring with both films. And I toured straight without fail every year from 2005 to 2020. The only reason I stopped was because of the pandemic. I would have continued going on. I mean, the pandemic was bad for everybody in so many different ways, but that's really why I stopped touring. I didn't realize it was going to be literally 5 years before I had the film ready. So
do you think it would have even been longer if it wasn't for the pandemic? Because that gave you time, like you couldn't tour, and so you had to do like the color correction and things.
No, I don't. I mean, the pandemic slowed things down just because everybody had to be isolated for a while. So yeah, there was some slowness from that, but we continued working on. Mainly, a lot of that was with me and this fellow František Timal. I've actually never said his name out loud. I think it's either Timal or Timnal. Timal, I think it's Timal. But anyhow, František and I were, and he's still involved in the output right now. I still have some sound things that are being done. He had introduced me to the fellow who's doing the final sound mix, Dominic. But yeah, it's hard to say what would have made things go faster. There's also an element of autodidacticness, meaning, is that the right word? Teaching myself what to do, because for me, it was unprecedented. I'm not saying nobody's ever done color correction like this before. Like I mentioned, the Woody Allen, well, it's not color correction, but the deterioration of the film. But
oddly enough, that's another favorite movie of my brother's.
Yeah,
so
well, it's got a lot of interesting things in it. But like I said, that was done in a corporate sense with one of the top filmmakers. He said he'd never spent so much time to make something look less perfect. But it was, I think it was a couple of years. So that was with all of the facilities and everything. So we would have to sit there and think about it, and then it had to be, František did a lot of the physical work, and then we had to recolor correct with the attempt at Technicolor. It was time consuming. It's hard to say. I've wanted the film out years ago. I don't know. I started shooting another film. I'm shooting it in the next one in black and white, super.
Is it
16.
the third of the trilogy?
No,
Okay.
I've started shooting another movie. I want to get back to that, but I've spent so many decades just with that part 1 and 2, and it's a very particular theme. And there's other themes I'm interested in. So I want to make some films, and I want to get so I can make films faster. This is too long. The way I've been making it, but that's part of it. Is I spent 2 years just in the color correction, so having it in black and white, I can color correct that myself. I know what I want. I want high contrast. I'm not so concerned about that. But yeah, no, I plan to continue touring. The idea now is to not stop touring. Let's hope there's not another pandemic, which could happen. It could be worse too. It was bad enough. And that wasn't even as seemingly immediately lethal as what happened in 1918. So
interesting. That's a date in the movie, right?
Yeah. And this was before the pandemic. There's a newspaper that's from 1918. There's some information is used the old classical way of a newspaper headline, and something happens from it. But one of the sidelines is about something like influenza spreads from the church, just to be accurate. But this was before we shot that in something like 2015 or something. So.
Oh, that's weird. I assume those dates are all specific for a reason, or are they just you wanted that era?
Yeah. Well, there's generations, so we just need. I just picked stuff that I can remember. 1868, 20 years later, 1888. 1918, 1948. It's not, some of them are 20, some of them are 30, but just it was an easy way for me to remember 1868, 1888, 1918, 1948, and then later the contemporary came into being. But
do you always use your middle name? Because I noticed you use your middle name on the movies you direct.
Well, what happened was, that is my real middle name. My father's middle name was Herbert, which he didn't like. And as a struggling actor, he would say to himself, I'm Bruce H. Glover. I'm Bruce Hellion Glover. I'm a hellion. I'm a troublemaker. And it made him feel good as a struggling actor in New York. And he told my mother that was his middle name. And then when they were married, she saw on the marriage certificate, Bruce Herbert Glover. And she thought, who am I marrying? And then they gave it to me.
It's definitely not as cool as Hellion, I have to say.
Yeah, it is a pretty good middle name, and I was aware of what it meant as a kid, and I did artwork as a kid, and I would sign it Hellion. I didn't use Crispin or Glover. I just signed it Hellion, and then sometimes I would sign my whole name, or writing. We had writing assignments, and they had publications. I would write Crispin Hellion Glover, and so I used it for my artwork. But then when signing up for Screen Actors Guild, I thought that's kind of cumbersome for an actor's name. Crispin Glover is already pretty, although funny enough, there's another guy named Crispin Glover in England that he does house music. He has the courtesy, or his own self-preservation, whatever. I'm sure it's his own self-preservation. He uses Crispin J. Glover. I don't know if he's as active now. He was kind of more active in the 90s, but I think he's still active. I've never met or communicated with the guy, but so there is another, Crispin in England it's not totally common, but it's more common. When my father was shooting Diamonds Are Forever in whatever year that was, 72 or something, we were in London. It was during summer, so my mother and father and I were in London while they were shooting Diamonds Are Forever. And we went to Westminster Abbey. We went to a lot of different museums and things, but we went to Westminster Abbey, and I was really excited. There's a picture of me. I haven't seen it in a while. I'm sure I had to go through all of my parents' things in the last couple of years because of my father's health. And there's a picture of me sitting on a tomb in Westminster Abbey, and I'm very happy because there's a monk that was buried named Crispin. And when as growing up, right in the 70s, you started to see stickers and things where kids had their names written. There was never a Crispin on it. It was the first time it was on this tomb of a monk it said Crispin. I was really
Yeah.
excited. And I went back and I found it again, and I took a photo later on the same tomb.
I get what you're saying, because those things, they never they will have Neal sometimes, but it's never spelled the same way as I have it spelled. So.
Okay.
So it's with the I in it. So
okay.
yeah.
But
and
yeah,
my brother's Troy.
They never. Of course, now everything can be personalized easily, but they never ever had my name. But yeah, I can't remember why we were talking about that.
Oh, is that about your middle name? I was just wondering if it was something.
Oh, right. So then, but
yes.
because even still, I was continued doing artwork which was my books, and it was part of the artwork. I had my whole name on the books, Crispin Hellion Glover, and so for my filmmaking, which I consider part of my art, I used to consider acting my art. But around the year 2000, I mean, I don't mean to disparage it in that way, but in the year 2000, or just before that, I had to get money to finish and to shoot Everything Is Fine. And I had been offered a lot of stuff in the 80s and 90s that I turned down. I was very particular. And I mean, I could probably make the argument if I stayed particular about that, maybe I'd be making more money as an actor now, because there is something to it. Like in the 80s and 90s, people knew I was very particular, and people would want me to do things. But I had to switch out of that. I just needed to be able to fund my films. So I just started working more regularly on things. There was a time, I won't say what film, I just needed to make money for my films. There were various things that were going on. I got an offer that was of a quote. I said, whatever this is, I'm going to make this work. And I opened the script and I did it. And I won't say what the film was, but it's not one of my better films. I mean, there's some people that like it. There are people that like it, and they'll say things to me. I know it's whatever, but I mean, so I've transferred it. It's my craft. I will try to make. I mean, I sometimes I'll if depending on the financial situation, which sometimes I can be more particular, which I would rather be. And but no matter what, I always try to do a good job. I always, I can't help but. There's always the concern of being humiliated, like publicly humiliated if you don't do a good job. So I always want to do a good job. But I consider now acting as a craft, which I'm glad to do. And and of course there's an art to that craft. But really the thing I hold as my art is the filmmaking, and barely anybody's seen my filmmaking, because I tour with the films, and I don't.
Yeah, part of that is by design, I guess, but yeah.
Well, it would be better, of course, if I did have a more standardized.
There is honestly, corporate. I've had a conversation with a friend of mine. Kaylee's going to come out. I had not met her before. I know her in line, and she's going to come out to see your movie in Brookline with me. So that's exciting. And I talked to her, something exciting about this idea that you only can see this movie in person.
Well, luckily there are people that do it. Well, I was starting to talk about the recoupment. So the way I've recouped is really by the live shows. This new film, I don't think I can, even if I toured for 20 more years or whatever, I don't think I will particularly recoup on this film. But like I say, there's a different investment strategy in it. So because I've relegated it to this art, I think of it as a special thing, and I'm okay with doing it that way. I mean, I want to make it all work financially, and I'll keep doing it. Maybe some point I'll happen to make a movie that would be corporately aligned. I'm not anti the idea of making something that corporations happen to like. If it just happens that there's a corporation that likes what I've done, and they feel that this will be good, and they want to sponsor it and get big distribution, great. I would love that. That would be fantastic. But I just would rather do what I'm interested in doing. I think it's possible I could make something that would be of large so-called corporate interest.
I do go to the movies every weekend, and there seems like there are more weird things that get released.
Yeah. No, I think there can be. There's always good films being made, no matter what. You can also argue that a repressive culture then brings out more interesting things, because there are people that are trying to react to that. So it actually seemingly could be one of the great times for films. But then what films are seen? How did they get out? How do people see them? Sometimes there might be a great film that somebody made last year that nobody's seen, and we won't see it for another 30 years. Anything's possible. I tend toward thinking there's a fair amount of that could be happening. And I applaud any way anybody can do it, whether it's through the corporate system or by selling it to a museum or having to struggle working at a post office. Any way that anybody can get something of genuine interest out that's their passion, that's great.
I mentioned my brother, and he did have a question, so I feel bad if I do not ask it.
Yeah.
He's a big fan of American Gods. He loves the novels by Neal Gaiman.
Yeah,
so he wanted to know if you had read the novels before taking the role, or if
I didn't read it before. No, I did finally read it before the second season was shot, and it's great. It's a great novel. I had not read a that was still to this date the most contemporary novel I've read. I think before that, the most contemporary novel I'd read was either probably a Kurt Vonnegut novel, which I read in high school. So I think I read it relatively close to when it had been written. I think probably written in the 70s at some point, and I read it in the late 70s. It was probably written in the early 70s. So I think that was the most contemporary novel I'd read until I read Neal Gaiman's American Gods, which is excellent. It had an interesting psychedelia, and there was a contemporary aspect to it, which of course had changed. It's funny that I haven't read that many contemporary novels, and I know Neal Gaiman a bit, so I was able to talk to him, and but it was strange because there was some kind of legal thing initially in the first season that it was adapted, and he was not supposed to be involved in it. I don't quite understand. There was some legal reason he wasn't supposed to be involved in it. And Brian Fuller and Michael Green were the original showrunners, writers, conceptualizers of it, and they did a great job. I still don't exactly understand what happened. They were fired from the first season. It was great. It was some of the best writing I've ever gotten to play. Then there was a long pause, and then almost like a year later, like a whole season could have been shot in the interim of when I was originally told it was going to be 3 seasons, and they were going to get everything done. My character's resolution toward the end of the book, and it was in the 3rd season. And we did shoot 3 seasons, but it wasn't with the original showrunners who, when I was told it would have been done. My character never came to its conclusion. And it was an interesting conclusion. Yeah. But as the seasons developed, Neal Gaiman was more involved, but it was less like the book, which I didn't understand. And Neal Gaiman seemed very happy with it. So it's his book. I'm not going to argue with that. And it's a great book. And if he wanted to change it, but I don't know. I also don't know how much control he did or didn't have. It seemed like he was involved with, but I don't know. I didn't have detailed conversations with him about it. I liked working with him very much. Very, very pleasant and easy, nice fellow, intelligent. I enjoyed working on the show. I do wish the original showrunners had not been fired. I thought they did a great job. I liked working with the other people that worked later, but just there wasn't a consistency of what the original. Even though the way something is adapted is very different from one person to the next, so it's going to have a different quality no matter what. But I'm glad I did it. I found it interesting. I like I say, I would have loved to have had the conclusion for my character.
Yeah,
as was in the book, but these things happened.
Yeah, he's always been trying to get me to read the book. I will read the book, Troy.
It's good.
Yeah. And I also want to mention, hopefully this isn't a movie you'd mentioned you're not a fan of, but I love your version of Ben, the song.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I let's see what happened with that. So Glenn Morgan, who's the writer-director on it, we were talking about it. The song, I think it was written in the script as a part. I think it's playing on the radio when somebody puts a cat. Is it my character? I don't know. I don't even remember now. There's somehow a cat gets into a basement or something, and there's suddenly all these rats around. So the cat is afraid of the rats. And in that sequence, the song Ben, the original sung by Michael Jackson, is playing on the radio. So somehow there became I started talking with Glenn Morgan about the end credits song, and I don't remember if that was already a concept, and but I had recorded an album with Barnes and Barnes, a musical kind of novelty group. Bill Mumy, who my father had worked with in Bless the Beast and the Children. It was a good acting performance by Bill Mumy in that movie. But he produced and was a musician in Barnes and Barnes. This record that was a conceptual record. Big problem does not equal the solution. Solution equals let it be. But why was I talking about that?
The song Ben. The song.
I just was saying that I really there were two producers. There's Bill Mumy and Robert Hamer, who sadly died a couple of years ago, and I'd worked with Robert on another record, which I still need to put out. There's different things going on, but Robert and I produced the song for the end credits, singing Ben, and then there was some concept maybe that Glenn Morgan was going to direct the video for it, but he had too much work in post-production, which I understand, and then so I ended up directing the video, which I enjoyed doing. That's the only time I've ever had corporate money to work on something, which was interesting. But there were things that were questionable to me about how that functioned. But that's the only time I shot it in a day. I had it all storyboarded out.
It's a cool video. I've actually I share it every once in a while over the years on my social media. I really like, honestly, not because you're here, I really like your version of the song.
Yeah, I've only directed I've directed 3 films and 2 music videos. Well, there's another movie I started making, like I said, that I should finish at some point. It's based on one of my books called The Backward Swing, but that was shot on video. But we used the technology at the time to an interesting effect. But in any case, I directed Clowny Clown Clown, which was on that.
I watched that
as well. Yeah. So I directed those 2 music videos.
Okay.
Many more people have seen those music videos than have seen my films. And I mean, the amount of work that I put in my films compared to those music videos, I would wish the amount of people that have seen those music videos would see my films. But it's just the easy access, of course. So those things are up and people are able to see them.
Yeah. I watched a documentary about R. Lee Ermey. It was something that someone made that was like an independent documentary online. And seemed like a really interesting guy because like he wasn't originally even going to be in Full Metal Jacket. He was like on set to just like,
I like
like, yeah. And then like he gives him the role because like, oh, he's actually better than the actor that I have for the movie.
Yeah, he was an interesting fellow. I liked him, and I directed him. I directed him in the he's in the music video.
Yeah.
So I worked with him both as an actor in Willard and then as a director for the music video. He was great. I really liked R. Lee Ermey.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, he has a presence anytime he's on camera.
Yeah. He was, and he actually said things when we were shooting that were good. He had a certain suggestion which was good, and it helped make a scene better. He was an interesting fellow.
And I have to ask, multiple people sent me this in. I'm not going to ask everything people sent, but it seems kind of a silly question, but people want to, your memories of the Friday the 13th, the final chapter dance that you do in the movie. And what was that? Did they play like a specific song for you to dance to?
No, what it was, of course, in the script, it just says they dance, and then, there was some, generally in Friday the 13th, people have sex and then they get killed. So,
right. Yeah.
That's what happens to my character. So the dance is where, I meet the girl or whatever, the courtship of the girl that leads to me having sex with her, which of course the dance that is done is not what you would typically think of as being a courtship dance. But it was, the thing is I just said, put on, it was Back in Black by AC/DC, which was what was used when we were shooting. But they, of course, they didn't have the rights to that, so they put some other music there. And so when I danced to the Back in Black, it was a little more syncopated to that song than to what they put later. But even still, it was not the typical dance somebody would dance to Back in Black. It was just an atypical kind of asynchronous way of moving. And with me, it's a funny thing with the film, because I had moved out of my parents' house when I was 18, and I had saved up some money I think I had $10,000 in the bank account, which in 1982, when I moved out, was of some more value than it is now. But still, it was a limited amount. And I had been out of the house for about 6 months, and I didn't have very much money in the bank. I was getting nervous. I hadn't worked. I had done a movie for the AFI, which I did for no salary, called The Orkley Kid. I did it under a SAG contract, but I just did it. You want to do interesting things, not having a lot of footage or what have you. And it was a good movie, but I didn't have a lot of money, and I was starting to make a comedy routine. Actually, I was thinking, well, maybe I can make money doing comedy, because I was still in acting class at the time, which was improvisation with technique, but there was a certain improvisation that I did on my own that was an odd thing, but there was something humorous about it at the same time. So I was kind of thinking I could turn that into an act of some kind. But so I just started working it out because I was just getting worried. I thought maybe I can make money as a comedian or something, and which is probably not a good plan. I know that's a very difficult route, but I more so than now, I could be funny in a way at that time. I'm less, my energy is less that way. I have a sense of humor, but I played more with it at that time. Anyhow, I'm thinking about that Dr. Demento show. They're coming to take
Oh yeah, yeah. I think he just
the song, you know, they're
Yeah.
coming to take me away, and they have the siren.
Yeah, to the
but
funny
but
part.
Yeah, and then the audition for Friday the 13th happened. By that time, I'd known that if you're going to audition with somebody in a room, another actor, if you can rehearse beforehand, you would be able to. There's something about getting the energy correlated. And I got hold of the actor that I was going to audition with through his agent. I got their name, and then we rehearsed for it. Actually, it was a guy. I got the part. He didn't get the part, but then he was in River's Edge. Phil Brock is his name. He's a good actor. But yeah, so we auditioned, but then he ended up being in River's Edge later. But it was, you know, I know there's a lot of people that are fans of the franchise. And I remember I said something one time where I said, well, I needed money. And people were like mad that I somehow had disparaged Friday the 13th. You know, you as a working actor, you're trying to get work. So I wasn't being disparaging, but it really wasn't what I was, you know, aspiring to at the time. When the year that the original Friday the 13th came out, they happened to, at least in Los Angeles, have a re-release of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And so I went and saw the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre in a theater that's still there called the Culver Theater. It was re-released, and I liked it. I thought that was a really interesting movie. And then it was within a month or two, I went and saw the original Friday the 13th in the movie theater, which my perspective on it was that it was sort of derivative of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But I mean, basically, Texas Chainsaw Massacre made the slasher genre. That was the original slasher film. And then there's all these other movies that are variations of that theme. And I felt like the original one was of interest. I kind of thought, all right, well, although I haven't even seen all of these. I probably should. Like I love John Carpenter's films. I've never seen any of the Halloween movie, but I should, just because I do like.
The original Halloween's great. Yeah,
I'm sure he's
oddly enough, both Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think there's no blood in Halloween and very little blood in Texas Chainsaw. But you think of them as very bloody movies.
Well, Carpenter's a great filmmaker. But I wasn't, you know, thinking about that. I was just thinking, oh, here's another one of these slasher films. So I've still never seen it. I need to see it because I do like John Carpenter, so I need to see all his films, and I've never seen that one.
What's your favorite?
Because of that reason. So to me, it was like, all right, I'm in this slasher film thing, which I thought the first one was already derivative. I wasn't. For me, I was thinking, well, I better just have a good time. I just might as well enjoy myself. So I was just having a good time. So to me, I thought I'll do this dance thing, which was kind of enjoyable for audiences. I wasn't thinking it too much about it. I did it. The director was fine with it.
I'm sure he never thought, you know, decades later, people would still be talking about it.
No, you don't plan on things like that. No, I was not. But I'm glad. You know, I'm glad. It's good. It's people seem to like it.
It's fun.
And the fact that there's a big book about Friday the 13th, and people come and they want me to sign that book, or people are excited about it. So it's good.
Yeah. What's your favorite John Carpenter movie?
They live.
They live. Yeah.
But I mean, The Thing is great too. But I love, I have a big interest in corporate elements, and
yeah.
that the messages of that film, the fact that he got that out in a corporate way, and it's a strongly anti-corporate message.
Oh yeah, I think it's even more relevant today than it was when they made it, or just as relevant.
That's a great movie on so many levels. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Crispin, HellyandGlover.com, people can go and see where they can see No, You're Wrong. And was that always the title?
Yes. Well,
I know
yes, you'll see the in the movie. My father and I, we were working on the script for a long time. Mike Pelagi also has a writing credit in it. But my father and I had a lot of arguments, a lot, very strong arguments. You'll see in the movie what it has to do with. But I knew what the title was before we started shooting.
Yeah. All right. And, by the way, I know it's kind of like a generic question, but since this is a horror show, and I actually like all movies, it's just this show we primarily talk about horror stuff. What are some of your favorite horror movies?
Well, like I say, I like pre-codes a lot. Mm-hmm. I like silent films a lot. I very much like Vampire. The first. What is the name of the director? I believe it's the same director that directed Passion of Joan of Arc, silent film, which is a great film. And then the thing about Vampire is it's sort of you can see there's aspects of Dracula, but I'm pretty sure Dracula, the same reason as Nosferatu was. Right. The F.W. Murnau version, the book was still in copyright, so they had to come up with something that didn't use Dracula that was like it without copyright infringement. And Vampire is sort of like that as well, but Vampire is more. It has surreal qualities to it. That's a very interesting film. I love Boris Karloff's performance in the original Frankenstein, and then I love Dwight Fry's performance in both. But I have an interesting story about Dwight Fry and my father. That's very something very interesting about that. But Dwight Fry is also great in Dracula. His performance is the emotional fulcrum.
I agree.
It's not Bela Lugosi, who's good, and that's Todd Browning, he's one of my favorite filmmakers. Some people will call his film that he did after the success of Dracula, which is his best film, and it's one of the just greatest pieces of art. I wouldn't even put it in the category of just great films. Is Freaks. That film is so amazingly great in so many levels. But I wouldn't call it a horror film, but you hear people calling it horror. To me, it's a much more humane. It's a human story. It's fantastic. I like some of the psychological terror, being Polanski's Repulsion. I love that film. I like the objective correlative that exists in The Possession, which is later, and of course Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. But they're both good examples of objective correlative. Being The Shining really is about family or child abuse. That's the objective correlative in The Shining, and in The Possession, it's the objective correlative is a bad romantic relationship.
That movie's really gained an audience recently.
Yeah. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Things that have something brewing under it. Oh, I like a film that isn't as popular. I'll watch it. I've been watching it somewhat regularly. I first saw it on television when I was a kid, just a part of it, and I always remembered it. And I watched it relatively recently. I have it on DVD. It's called Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
Yeah.
And I think the acting is very good in that film. The objective correlative of that film would be mental illness. And it's very, very, I think the performances are all excellent. The main actress in it gives a terrific performance. There's an unnerving quality to it, and it bridges genres. But I love what, the original Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead by Romero, Dawn of the Dead, or Night of the Living Dead having a kind of a civil rights message, which I think sort of happened organically or accidentally. That was the actor happened to be black, who is the best actor for the part.
And I think that's why that holds up. I think because the movie they don't really reference that he just is.
It's great. Yeah, it's great that
and
way.
I think it could date it a little bit if they really bring attention to it.
Yeah, no, just that it wasn't written that way, and the guy happened to be the best actor that auditioned.
Yeah. Which in of itself is a good statement.
Right. It was that was a good in that way. And then Dawn of the Dead also has a message about shopping. Ultimately, it's a great movie about shopping.
That's my favorite zombie movie, honestly.
So I mean, I am a cinephile. I don't tend toward the horror genre, but there are great films in that genre. I've enjoyed all of those. Videodrome by Cronenberg.
Oh yeah.
That's almost more psychedelic than but it's psychological terror. It's an interesting mix. That's my favorite film by Cronenberg. I love that film. I
used to rent that a lot as a kid on VHS, which maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. Like it was.
Meaning you were too young to see it?
Yeah, my mom didn't care what I saw as a kid. Like,
I wasn't allowed to see R-rated films until I got older. So I didn't see. I probably could have been okay with it, but I'm sure I would have been okay with it. But for whatever reason, I wasn't supposed to see R-rated films. The first R-rated film I saw, a friend of mine and I, we were both, I guess we were 16. It was when Apocalypse Now came. Maybe we were 15. I think that came out in 79. And we both wanted to see it. And so we went to Westwood and we found some adult to buy us our tickets, and we went in and saw it. So I think Apocalypse Now is the first R-rated film I saw as a young, I was a teenager, not quite an adult, and I liked it. The funny thing is, at the time, I didn't really know who Marlon Brando was. I didn't. That's probably the first movie I saw Marlon Brando in, and I didn't know who Robert Duvall was. And I was confused enough. I liked the film, but the only thing that really confused me was, why is the guy who is talking about loving the smell of napalm in the morning earlier in the story down the river, why is he at the end? Just by the fact that they both had bald heads, I thought they were the same person. I didn't know who Robert Duvall or Marlon Brando was. Right. Which I should, as a filmmaker, I should know that lesson. It's something that's in this movie that has my father and I played the same character at different ages. Now, see, I shouldn't even talk about this. This is what I don't know that I should be revealing. But I naively thought that would be easy for people to pick up on. But I don't think that, as a kid, I should know, because I saw two very completely different actors playing two completely different characters, and I equated them just because of a similarity in the way they looked, which nobody would take a picture of Marlon Brando and a picture of Robert Duvall, even in those characters, and say that it's they look alike. But just that simple identification mixed me up as a kid. But it was something that is in my own film that I should have been thinking about for that very reason. But
I like that, though, that you're both playing the same character, different ages. That seems like a natural idea.
Yeah. My father and I look alike in certain ways. In certain ways, we don't. I strangely just found a photograph of my great-grandfather on my mother's side that I'd never seen, from the 1800s. My mother's mother died at my mother's birth. And so she was adopted within her family, but I didn't know her, because her mother died at her birth. I didn't know those. Well, they died anyhow, but even my mother didn't know her maternal grandparents. So I just online early this year, found this photo of this great grandfather of mine. And it's strange because I look a lot like my father, but the things that don't look like my father's face, it looks like this great grandfather of mine that I just found. Very, very strange, because I actually do look like this guy in a strange way. His name was Reinhold Pfaff, P-F-A-F-F, Reinhold Pfaff. He came over in the late 1800s to the U.S. I think 1869, I think.
So, did you want to talk at all about the Dwight Fry story with your dad?
No, I'll save that for another time someday. Well, maybe I should tell it. I watched Dracula on television, and when, I don't know, 12, 13, what have you. And when I was watching Dwight, when I was watching Dwight Fry, there were certain facial expressions and something, it was a specific expression. I can't even say what it was. And a look, I thought, that reminds me of my father. It looks like my father. And it was an uncanny thing. It was like, that really looks like my father. And I never mentioned it to anybody. And then years later, I was talking to my father about something. I don't remember what. Maybe I mentioned Dwight Fry. I can't remember. But he said he was working on a play, and the stage manager came up to him and said to him, you remind me of my father. And he said, my father's name was Dwight Fry. And he's an actor. And my father, I think, knew who Dwight Fry was. Yeah. So years later, I saw a book online about the life of Dwight Fry. I've always liked his acting. I thought he was really, a great figure that isn't talked about too much. And so I bought this book online, and it came to me, and it had a note in it, and it was his son had published the book. And he wrote a note to me saying, years ago, I worked with your father on a stage play. I was stage managing. He didn't say anything about having said that his father had reminded him of my father. So yeah. I meant to write back. I've got to write him back, because I had the same experience that he had about his father that I had about my father, where my father reminded Dwight Fry's son of him, and Dwight Fry's father reminded me of my father. So I was going to write him about it, and then I saw that he died. So I never, which is too bad. But it's a very interesting, strange coincidence. I wish I had gotten to that letter faster.
Yeah, that's really wild. And you mentioned Boris Karloff. Just to say, one of my favorite interviews on the show is Sarah Karloff, his daughter, and she's just really interesting and told stories about Boris as her father. And it was actually just a sweet interview, I think.
Sure, I'm sure he was a great father. He was. I mean, you never know. You never know.
No, but he was. Yeah.
But he did
really about acting, like, to her as.
I've seen some silent films that he was in, and some early pre-codes. Before he got associated with more horror.
Yeah, that's like his 50th movie or something.
Yeah, I mean, when people did silent films, they would do 25 films in a year. Like they could make those very rapidly, and did make them rapidly sometimes. He had worked a lot, but the things that I've seen of him early on was more. He played like bad guys, gangsters, and there's a silent film where he's out in the wilderness and he's fighting people. He was always good. He was a really, really great actor. And, you know, he's highly rated. And even then I would say he's underrated. His performance in that film is so, you feel a lot for him. Mm-hmm. And that he imbued the character with a lot of empathy, pathos, which I hold pathos on a very high level. If somebody can get pathos within something, for me that I admire that more than almost anything. Maybe that is the thing
What do you mean by that?
It isn't just empathy. It isn't just sympathy. It's an impossible situation where somebody's in an impossible situation that circumstances, there's no way to get out of it. And they're trying, no matter what, to get out of it in some nice way. And it's heart-wrenching. when that's communicated well, it's just really, really great. And I mean, there's other examples of it that it's not a horror film, but Charles Laughton in Hunchback of Notre Dame has that quality. Emil Jannings in The Last Laugh has that quality. It's rare. There's an interesting acting thing I've noticed. You know, people often say Marlon Brando is the greatest actor, and he is one of the greatest actors. But key word is one of the greatest actors. There's so many different forms of acting, but there's a rare analysis that one can do between Laughton and Marlon Brando. They both played the same role in Island of Dr. Moreau. Brando plays Moreau, yeah. And in Island of Lost Souls, Charles Laughton plays the same character, and that's a pre-code horror. And they have the same scene for both actors. I mean, it's different writing, so there's always going to be differences, but it's the death scene of the character. And when Laughton dies in the scene, there's a pathos to it. When Brando dies in it, I mean, he's very amusing in that film.
Yeah. I actually just saw it again recently. That's a cool age.
Really, really funny in that movie. Uh-huh. But when he dies, the thing that Marlon Brando always has, which is a great quality to have, it's a great quality, but he's a hero. He has an heroic quality, like, what is it? Well, in Streetcar
Named Desire.
Well, there's Streetcar Named Desire, but there's the one on the waterfront.
Oh yeah.
No, that's structured for him to be a hero. But if you really analyze Streetcar Named Desire, his character is not the hero. His character is not the protagonist. Structurally, his character is the antagonist. The protagonist is the Blanche Dubois character. He's sort of a bad guy. He rapes her, which is more explicit in the original play, and they had to take away censorship elements for the film. But because Brando is very compelling and has a lot of charisma, he's very likable, which you should do. You should do. That's a job of an actor, is to play the character, what they're doing. But you could actually remake that movie, and you don't need to have a handsome, muscular, kind of brooding, angry guy. You could have like a happy, kind of mean guy who's like skinny, like a nerd, like prototypical nerd, wears glasses, has pencils in his pocket. He would serve exactly the same function, because all he has to do is rape Blanche Dubois, and any guy could essentially overpower Blanche Dubois. So Brando happened to be the best actor that came in for the part, and it's understandable why he was cast in it. But he had something innately within him that was heroic. He was a great actor. But similar, I would say, well, also in On the Waterfront, well, that's, yeah, he's playing a heroic character. But anyhow, in the movie with in Island of Dr. Moreau, you know, Moreau is, you could go a lot of different ways. You can say, yes, Moreau's a hero. You can say Moreau is questionable because, I mean, I think the author's original intent is that, which is more of a Christian background, is that you shouldn't be playing around with humanity and turning them into birds or what have you, or semi-birds. But at the same time, if somebody can fly, maybe they'd have a good time. Who knows?
I actually read the book for the first time recently after I saw the movie again.
Was it
and it
good?
made me interested to go back and actually watch all three film
Wa-
versions.
was
Yeah,
the-
I love the book actually.
Yeah,
The
I've
book is
never
great.
read one of his books. I should, but I would say between those two scenes, as much as Marlon Brando's great and he did a great job in it, but I prefer the pathos that comes through Charles Laughton in that scene. I always hold pathos higher than heroism.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can see Marlon Brando talking on Dick Cavett, like Dick Cavett saying, "I could never do what you do," and Marlon Brando says, "No, everybody can be an actor." He doesn't say that, but he says something to that effect, and he says, Dick Cavett says something like, "Are you saying that I could do what you do?" And Brando says, "No, I'm not saying that, but I am saying that there are things you could do that I couldn't do. Like, for example, I couldn't do what you're doing here on this show. You're having to look at the monitors and think about the time, and you have multiple things going on at the same time." And Dick Cavett says, "I feel like I've been undressed." But so he was aware of his own limitations. Many people hold him up as like this perfect thing, but he wouldn't like that if somebody said that to him. He understood his own limitations. Not that, I mean, they're great. His limitations were great limitations. To have an heroic quality on some level, no matter what you do, is not a bad limitation to have, if you want to call it a limitation. It's just people are, what do they call it? It's always kind of funny when you hear people, actors, calling it their instrument, but it's true. It's like if you have a thing that is you, and you're utilizing that to express certain things, you're going to have just a physicality. And men generally will play male parts, so you're going to be playing that. You look certain ways, act certain ways, so it's going to be innate, which is not necessarily a bad thing. You just utilize that for what one can utilize that for. That would be the same with Marlon Brando.
I'm going to be at the November 3rd show at Coolidge, but the world premiere is coming up at MoMA.
Well, yeah, and I
2nd.
should say quickly, if anybody, we've been talking a long time. Do you edit this? I don't know how long.
Yeah, I wrote down a couple time cues. I'll edit some stuff out.
But so first show, Museum of Modern Art. Then I'm a week at the IFC, the 10th through the 16th here in New York. Then in Los Angeles at the Arrow, I think it's the 18th and 19th. That's through the American Cinematheque. I've always played at the Egyptian through the American Cinematheque, but that's now purchased by Netflix. So there may be a point later where I'll do a show at the Egyptian, which is where I've done my shows before. But that would be a bit later on. And then I go to Chicago. I'm forgetting the exact dates, but that's at the
October
Music
23rd at Music Box.
That's right, and that's a big, beautiful venue. Big venue like the Coolidge will be. How many seats is the Coolidge?
I'm not sure how many seats on it. I've been there many times, so it's a pretty big.
It's
theater.
big like the Music Box. So I'm excited. I had been at there's Coolidge and then the Brattle I'd been to one time before with my show.
Yeah, I've been to both lots of times. Brattle does a Boston Underground Film Festival, like my favorite local film festival. Yeah. It's a little smaller, but they're both really cool, and both of them have a real nice atmosphere.
Yeah. No, I like the Brattle. I mean, I'm really looking forward to playing it the Coolidge. And there's other venues. You started to ask, yeah, I plan to continue touring. So what happens is then there's venues I've played before, which I'll certainly go back to, and inevitably a new venue will come along. So I plan to tour, and at some point I plan to bring in the first two films back into touring, but I want to focus on this film for a while because it is different. All of the films are different from each other, but the two films are parts 1 and 2 of what is to be a trilogy, and there is a thematic similarity, even though they're different films from each other. But this is not part of that trilogy, so it's more different in some way.
Well, I really enjoy talking with you. I'm glad, very happy that you took so much time to talk with me about the movie and movies in general.
You too. Well, thank you.